Topic of the class is called Understanding Three Heavens and Three Hells. So we'll probably have to break this class up in two sessions. But we want to get through it and slow it down. And if you have any questions, most definitely feel free to ask, because we don't want to. The purpose of this is to understand that when you read the Bible, every time you see the word heaven, it's just not referring to one aspect of, whether it be where the Most High dwells, the dwelling place of the Most High, or the afterlife. There's different variations of meanings of the word heavens when you read the word heaven in the Bible. So we're going to explore the three aspects of heaven that you can find in the Bible. All right, that's the purpose of this class. And the class, the verse that kind of sets this up is in 2 Corinthians. We have it on the screen, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. So if a brother could get ready for that, we want to go ahead and say shalom to all the brothers and sisters out there, isbhpk. That's part of this family of schools that we have throughout the United States, Europe, and Central and South America. I want to say shalom to all the brothers and sisters that watch our classes. Shalom to the new subscribers, and we ask that keep watching, and we'll keep hopefully edifying the body like always. So we want to salute and say shalom to all the brothers and sisters out there that believe in the Most High and that are resurrecting the children of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, Haitians, Jamaicans, West Indians, Seminole Indians, Argentinians, Brazilians, all those scattered throughout North, Central, and South America of Negro and Indian descent, man, woman, and child. We want to say shalom to you. If you've been oppressed and conquered, you fit the description of exactly what the Most High said would befall you in the last days, as far as the captivity of you being thrown out of your culture, robbed of identity, robbed of your language, robbed of your territory, your land, your resources. So all this has been prophesied by the Most High. So our message and our word is to the children of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So we want to say shalom to you.
Shalom.
All right, and we want to go ahead and get started with the first verse, which is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. Let's go ahead and read that.
1 Corinthians?
2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. I knew a man in Yahushai above 14 years ago. Whether in the body, I cannot tell.
Read it again.
2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. I knew a man in Yahushai above 14 years ago.
This is Paul talking. He said, I knew a man in Christ about 14 years ago. Go ahead.
Whether in the body, I cannot tell. Or whether out of the body, I cannot tell.
We have to take his word for it, because this guy was highly educated. He wasn't some drunk guy. He wasn't some high guy. He wasn't some guy just dreaming. This is a life experience he had. He's like, listen, I cannot tell if he was in the body or out the body. I still can't explain it. It's an anomaly.
Read on.
The Most High knoweth. Such and one caught up on the third heaven.
It says, such and one caught up to the third heaven. Such and one caught up to the third heaven. So here Paul is showing you already, he's calling a heaven, he's breaking it down in at least three classifications. He says caught up into the third heaven. So we know what he's saying is that there is at least how many heavens in the Bible? At least three heavens in the Bible. All right. So he's saying that this interaction that he had with this man, whether he was in the body or out of the body, he cannot tell. He says there was one that was caught up to the third heaven. Read on.
And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell.
Go ahead.
Most High knoweth.
Go ahead.
How that he was caught up into paradise.
Into what?
Into paradise.
So we know that one aspect of heaven is also known as what?
Paradise.
Paradise. So write that down. Heaven also being known as paradise. Go ahead.
And heard unspeakable words.
And
heard
these
what?
Unspeakable words.
All right. So in this paradise, in this third heaven, he says he heard unspeakable words. Go ahead.
Which it is not lawful for a man to utter.
Go ahead.
Of such an one will I glory.
All right. So he said he had unspeakable words that earthly people couldn't comprehend. Now we're gonna slow down now and go through each and every aspect and each and every variation the heavens that you find in the Bible, and we're going to get back to this one that he referred to as paradise. We're going to save that one for last. So the first one that we're going to go to is in the form of heaven that you read about in the Bible is, yes sir.
So if it was such a language that righteous men couldn't understand, that he was just speaking a different language?
It was, a different language or a different tongue. You could say a different tongue, which means language, which means a different language. Yes.
Why did he say it was not lawful?
Well, it's not that man would understand it, because when you go to let's go to Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 4. I want to get hold on one second. Matter of fact, let me pull the scripture up real quick, because
Wait, get translators.
yeah, that's what I want. I want to get this how it's necessary. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. I got you.
It's 1 Corinthians 14. Not Timothy. 1 Corinthians 14, and start at verse 5.
1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 5. I would that ye all speak with tongues,
Go ahead.
but rather that ye prophesy. For greater is he that prophesieth than he that speaketh with tongues,
Go ahead.
except he interpret.
Except he what?
Interpret.
So it's necessary in order to speak in tongues. It's necessary to have an interpreter present. Read on.
That the church may receive edifying.
It says that the church may receive what?
Edifying.
So what good is a language if the church cannot receive it or understand it? He said, remember the word edify means to elevate spiritually, mentally, or intellectually, to build up. It comes from the word edifice, which means a structure or building. It means to build somebody up. So what good is my language? What good is my tongue? What good is my speech if I can't use it to build you up? Then he said it's of no purpose if I can't build you up with my language. So although, when you look at, I know a war just went through about dealing with the Quran. The Quran is looked at as a beautiful book because they look at the style of writing that it was and the language that it was written in.
Yeah.
They said that the Quraysh, the Quraysh or the Quraysh tongue of Arabic is one of the most beautiful languages that you can speak. It's a high etiquette, high society, noble, articulate language or style of speech that the Quran is written in. So they look at the Quran as being powerful just because it's written in a high form of Arabic, a high form of Arabic. So it's like us actually reading old or understanding or speaking actual Old English. You know what I'm saying? We don't really speak English. You know what I'm saying? We speak a modification of English.
Yeah.
But they deem the Quran respectable because it's written in that fashion. That's not how the Bible's written. That's not how the Bible's interpreted. The word is not. It's not so much how illustrious the word is spoken, more so than how can it impact your life, and how can you comprehend and understand what you're reading. And that's what matters to the Most High, and that's what matters to Paul. He said, "What good is it to have this high language if nobody can understand what the hell he's talking about?" Right? Read on.
Verse 6. Now, brethren, if I come unto you speaking with tongues.
Now jump down to verse 13 real quick.
1 Corinthians 14, verse 13. Whether Wherefore, let him that speaketh in an unknown tongue pray that he may interpret. For if I pray in an unknown tongue, my spirit prayeth, but my understanding is unfruitful.
But my understanding is what?
Unfruitful.
And my understanding is unfruitful. So it doesn't. If I'm not getting understanding from this tongue, then all my words that I'm praying, it may sound good, but it's unfruitful because it doesn't benefit anybody. So the whole purpose of tongues and languages is to build up and edify the body and to build up and edify the church. One more in this chapter. Jump down to verse 26.
1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 26. How is it then, brethren, when ye come together, every one of you hath a song, hath a doctrine, hath a tongue, hath a revelation, hath an interpretation? Let all things be done unto edifying. If any man speak in
it says, let all things be done unto what?
Edifying.
Edifying. Let everything be done for the purpose. No matter how beautiful somebody may, some people say, man, you read the Bible and you use such beautiful words when your voice is so deep when you read the Bible, and it sounds real articulate, and you articulate the Bible. I like the way you read the Bible. You must be a prophet of God.
Yeah.
And this is how false prophets come about, because the way they speak and they're eloquent in their speech, and they sound so good with the Bible. They make the Bible sound real well. But if I'm not getting understanding, it's unfruitful.
Pull switch right here.
God.
Would you? Ecclesiastes in the Bible, chapter 1, verse 8. Ecclesiastes in the Bible, chapter 1 and verse 8.
Let somebody else read it. You stay where you at. Yeah, you stay where you are. You in 1 Corinthians chapter 14.
We need seventh Adam too.
You said Ecclesiastes?
Yeah, in the Bible.
Okay. Alright.
1 and 8.
Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 8.
Uh-huh.
All things are full of labor.
All things are full of labor. I mean, everything has effort associated with it, right? Read.
Man cannot utter it.
Read on.
The eye is not satisfied with seeing.
The eye is never filled with seeing. It's never going to be satisfied. It's always going to see something new, something different, some new style, some new creative way of doing something. The eye wants to be stimulated, right? Read.
Nor the ear filled with hearing.
Like Shawn was saying. And because the person says something very well and says it very, with a nice verbal aesthetic, with the nice language to it, a nice pronunciation. This is the ears never filled with what?
The ear.
It's never filled with hearing.
Not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing.
Meaning that people want to hear more and more and more. They have itching ears. They just want to hear information. It's not necessarily about how it impacts the life or how it makes sense according to the Most High. It's about how creatively can a person speak something.
And this is why Paul said, though I be rude in speech, but not in what?
Not in what?
Not in knowledge.
Not in knowledge.
So yeah, it may come off offensive, how Paul was saying that sometimes his words may come off abrasive and offensive. He said, but I'm not rude in knowledge, meaning what I'm telling you, you can use to build you up. It's effective knowledge. It's applicable knowledge. So let that go and go back to where you was at and finish that in 1 Corinthians chapter 14.
1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 26. How is it then, brethren?
He said, let all things, finish that bottom part. He says, let all things be done, how? He said, unto edifying.
Unto edifying.
Read on.
If any man speak in an unknown tongue, let it be by two, or at the most by three, and that by course, and let one interpret.
And let one do what?
Interpret.
So that the church is not confused. See, the Most High is not the author of confusion. So the purpose of speaking in tongue is to build somebody up. So if I'm speaking another language or foreign language, and I'm going to interpret it for the purpose of making somebody smarter or more intellectual or more spiritual or more knowledgeable in the subject of God's knowledge. Read on.
Verse 28. But if there be no interpreter, let him keep silence in the church.
So that's what he's saying, is that some things are not made to be said because they cannot be interpreted. So things that cannot be interpreted, even though it may sound good, it doesn't need to be spoken. if there's no one there to interpret it. So what he's saying, go back to now where we started at in 2 Corinthians chapter 12.
2 Corinthians chapter 12.
Mm-hmm. And when he says, verse 4.
2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4. How that he was caught up into paradise, and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter.
Because there's no what?
Understand? Interpreter.
There's no interpreter. There's nobody there to give understanding. What the purpose, and everything's supposed to be done for the purpose of edifying. Now, if there was an interpreter, that's different. So but from this verse, we're looking at the fact that Paul disclosed that there's at least 3 heavens. There's at least 3 heavens. So the first heaven we're going to go to is when a nation of people is in their power, rulership, and authority. That's their heaven on earth, or they're in their kingdom. And we're going to get examples of this. When a nation is in their kingdom, they're in their power, they're in their rulership, and they're in their authority. They have the ability to set laws, govern laws. They have dominion. They have the ability to execute judgment, and they have the ability to control people. So this is one example of a nation or people being in their heaven, or is heaven on earth, is when a nation has this dominion or have this power. All right. So let's get an example of this and go to Daniel chapter 2 and verse 36.
Daniel chapter 2 verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Verse 37. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom.
Now who he's talking to. He's talking to, this is Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, breaking down the vision and the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had in 538 BC during the rulership of the Babylonian Empire. When the Babylonians took over had world domination through conquest, and they took over the throne, or they became the world power, the world superpower. Okay, and so this happened around 538 BC. So because before the Babylonians were in power, the Assyrians were in power. All right. So let's read this right here.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
Verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom.
He says, for the God of heaven hath given thee a what?
A kingdom.
A kingdom. So he says, God gave you authority. He gave you a kingdom. A kingdom has a king. A king makes decisions. A king has subjects. A king has a military. A king makes rules. He says, you're the king of kings. You're the strongest of all the kings that are on the earth, because the Most High has given you a what? Power. He's given you rulership. Go ahead.
Power and strength.
He's given you power. Go ahead.
And strength.
And strength. Go
and
ahead.
Glory. Verse 38. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all.
So it's authority over resources. That's the part of having a kingdom. When you have the supreme resources, when you have supreme decision making, when you have supreme finances, when you have a supreme military, those are aspects of being in a heaven.
Yep. Cattle.
You got cattle.
You got cattle. You got water sources. You got resources.
God.
You own the minerals that come out the ground.
God.
And you control the people, and the people are subjects to you. They're in subjection to you.
God.
So now they're building your cities. They're paying your taxes, or they become tributaries to you. They pay you a yearly stipend of their increase, a yearly tax, or a yearly amount of whatever the resources it is that they come up with. you get a portion off the top as a king. So this is a form of a nation being in their heaven, is when they have this ability. Read that. Read on.
Thou art this heat of gold.
He says, thou art what?
On this
Thou
head of
art
gold.
this head of gold.
He's breaking down this. He had a dream about a statue in this image, and we know we're not going to break the whole thing down, but the Babylonian Empire was the head of gold of this image, this terrible image. The Persian Mede Empire was the next part of the statue that made up the arms and the chest. Then you had the Greek Empire, that was the stomach and the thigh. The thighs of brass was the Roman Empire, and the legs of iron. The legs of iron was the Roman Empire, and the feet was the British and American Empire. So he's breaking down different kingdoms that are coming to earth over a process of time. He says, but the most powerful of all these kingdoms that dwell upon the earth is Nebuchadnezzar's empire. When you read about the Babylonian Empire, you read about some of the, anybody heard of the 7 wonders of the world? Or the 8 wonders of the world? 7. Sometimes people say 8. So in Babylon, you have what's called the Hanging Gardens. The Hanging Gardens was an elevated terrace of gardens that was lifted and elevated above a platform that was off the ground, that had trees and fruits and vegetables of all sorts. And it took 100 servants a day with buckets of water down to the river every single day to water these gardens. And they were hanging gardens, so they were made on a terrace. So this feat would be almost impossible to do today, as far as the quantity and the width and the magnitude and the weight of these trees that were suspended off the ground. This is known as one of the 7 wonders of the world. Also, during the time of Babylon, you had the value of gold was immense, and Babylon really didn't have an accumulated value for silver and brass. Gold was the monetary source that was traded amongst Babylon. So even their statues were made of gold. Even their idols were made of pure gold. There is said that there was one idol in particular. Babylon, of course, had many idols. They had over 630 idols, and they had over 300 and something temples to worship at. And a majority of all their idols and their money was made out of gold, solid gold. So their wealth was strong. Their wealth was very strong. And so Daniel is showing Nebuchadnezzar that your kingdom is this head of gold. Your kingdom is this illustrious power that has preeminent force and control over all the earth. All right? What verse you on?
That was verse 38.
That's verse 38. Now we can still stay here and go to no, keep reading.
Verse 39. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee.
And he says, but the next kingdom that's going to come on earth, that's going to have power, rulership, and authority, they're not going to be as strong as you. They're not going to have the wealth that you have. They're not going to have the dominion that you possess. Right? So he said, so they're going to be inferior to you. They're not going to be as wealthy and as powerful as you are. So this understanding of what a nation has as being in their heaven is them enforcing and having the ability to have the influence of power, rulership, and authority over all peoples and the land and the animals. All right? To prove this even further, let's stay in Daniel and go to Daniel chapter 7 verse 14, but showing the Most High's kingdom.
Daniel chapter 7 verse 14. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom.
Now, read verse 13 and 14.
Verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him.
Go ahead.
And there was given him dominion and glory.
And he says, and the Son of Man is Christ, and he was presented in front of the Most High, and the Most High gave Christ what?
Dominion and glory, and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him.
And we know this is a future prophecy, because the coming of Christ's kingdom is going to be the last kingdom that's going to dwell upon the earth. And there's not going to be any other authorities or any other superpowers or any other world powers ruling the earth after Christ's coming kingdom. It's the last kingdom that's coming on earth. And when Christ returns with his kingdom, with his angels to execute judgment on earth, he says he's going to put all nations under subjection. All nations are going to follow his lead. Right? Read on.
His dominion is an everlasting dominion.
And how long is the coming kingdom of Christ going to last?
Everlasting.
It's going to be everlasting. Read on.
An everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed.
And it would never be destroyed. So every other kingdom on earth, every other nation had an opportunity to rule the world. But there was always a rise and a fall. Egypt rose and fell. Assyria rose and fell. Babylon rose and fell. Persian Media Empire rose and fell. The Greek Empire rose and fell. The Roman Empire rose and fell. Russia rose and fell. China rose and fell. And trying to climb back up. England became a world power. They were the top. Spain was a world power. France was a world power. Germany even was a world power during Hitler's time. So a lot of these kingdoms have rose and fell. He said, but the coming kingdom of Christ shall never fail. And it shall never lose its dominion and control over the earth. So showing that a form of heaven is when you have power, rulership, and authority on earth. All right? So now let's go to...
there can be heaven on earth.
There is heaven on earth.
Wow.
Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 6 and read verse 10.
Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Let's read verse 9 real quick.
Verse 9.
So we can kind of catch up to it.
After this manner, before pray ye, therefore pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
He says, sacred be thy name. Go ahead.
Thy kingdom come.
That's why Christ is asking that every time you say your prayer, every time you make a prayer every day, you're asking in your prayer that the kingdom of the Most High comes on earth. That the kingdom of the Most High be established on earth. That's why it says, after this manner pray ye, our Father, hallowed be thy name. Go ahead.
Thy kingdom come.
He said he's asking that your kingdom be established. Meaning your power, your rulership, your dominion is what's enforced on earth. He says, go ahead.
Thy will be done.
And your will, what it is that you desire, what it is that you want. You're supposed to pray every day that whatever the Most High wants comes down to earth. Go ahead.
In earth as it is in heaven.
The way it is.
Just the same way it is in heaven. He wants that same level of control, that same level of fear, that same level of respect, that same level of influence be put down here on earth as it is in heaven, so that there is no difference from the way the Most High rules heaven and what surrounds him as far as authority that he possesses. That same level of authority and respect is given to him on earth. That's why he said you're supposed to say this prayer every day, that the Most High brings his kingdom and his will down on earth as it is in heaven. Go ahead.
Give us this day our daily bread.
Now stop right there. That's good enough. Right. So we just want to go there to show that Christ wants you to pray this. He wants you to pray that the Most High's influence is the main source or the main level of control that's put on earth. Obviously, if Christ is asking for you to pray this, then there's a problem. Obviously, there's a difference between what the Most High wants and for what the current rulers of this world wants. Obviously, there's a difference. And Christ lets you know that there's a difference when you go to St. John chapter 18, verse 36.
John chapter 18?
Yes, St. John chapter 18, verse 36.
John.
So Christ is showing you that there is a difference between the way the Most High runs heaven. It's not the same way that things are being ran on earth, but you're supposed to be praying for that level of control and dominion. Read that right there.
John 18 and 36. Yahweh Shai answered, my kingdom is not of this world.
Christ said what?
My kingdom is not of this world.
What is he saying right here?
You're saying his kingdom is heavenly. Like his order, the way he's gonna run things, it's a whole different thing than the kingdom or the people that run in this world run things.
Yeah, there's a different mode of operation.
Yeah.
He said, I don't make the rules in this world. He said, my kingdom, my influence, my power, my authority, I don't really possess it on this world. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. And he's going to give you a taste of what his kingdom is like. The way it is in heaven when Christ is with the Most High. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. Read on.
If my kingdom were of this world,
He says, if I was the king of this world, read on.
then would my servants fight?
Because then he says, I have servants, I have soldiers, I have warriors, I have troops. He says, and what would they do?
That I should not be delivered to the Jews.
He said they would fight for me to where I would not have been taken and put into. You can't even approach the throne in Christ's kingdom. You can't even approach the throne when in the kingdom of the Most High. You can't even get close to
You
it.
can't even get. You gotta stay in the court. You can't even get into the.
You have to be summoned. You have to be summoned to even come to the throne, to the enthronement of Christ and the Most High. You can't approach. Just an example of this. Just an example of this. No, go to just an example of how a king. Right, we'll use Esther. How a king, how you can't even approach an earthly king, let alone the kingdom of the Most High in Christ. Go to Esther chapter 9. This is before Job. Let me see.
Esther chapter 9, right? Hold on.
Yes, Zoom is on. Shoot, Zoom is on. Hold on one second. Let me get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might be like.
No, chapter 5.
Yeah.
That's the chapter 5.
Chapter.
You want it, Robert?
Yeah, go ahead.
Got it.
Yeah,
I'm already-
Esther chapter 5, start at verse 1.
Come.
Now keep in mind, Esther became a queen to the kingdom of the Persian Mede Empire. Now, and the Persian Mede Empire came in power around 538 BC. Excuse me if I said that. The Babylonians was 586 BC. The Persian Mede Empire came in power approximately around 538 BC. So the kingdom of the Persian Mede Empire had control over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Egypt. That's how expansive their kingdom was. And Esther was a queen in this kingdom of over 127 provinces, stretching all the way from India to Egypt. But even she couldn't approach the throne and just walk up to the king. Not even in this earthly realm. Read that right there.
Come. Esther chapter 5 verse 1 reads, Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house.
So she stood on the inner court of the king's house. Read on.
Over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house.
Right in front of the gate of the house. Go ahead.
And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter.
And what does the scepter represent?
Rulership.
Rulership. It represents power. A king has a scepter because the scepter represents rulership and authority. Go ahead. And judgment. Go ahead.
Come. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew not near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request?
So, go ahead.
It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom.
So, showing you already, could Esther just walk up to the throne?
No.
You can't just approach the throne. That's even on earth. Let alone in heaven. That's why Christ said, go back to now John chapter 18 verse 36.
John 18 from the top.
Yes, sir.
John 18 and 36 from the top. Yahweh Shai answered, my kingdom is not of this world.
He said, man, if you understood my kingdom is not of this world. He's giving you a glimpse and a taste of what his kingdom is like. Read on.
If my kingdom were of this world,
He says, if my kingdom was of this world, read on,
then would my servants fight.
you wouldn't even be allowed to touch me. You wouldn't be allowed to approach me. You wouldn't be allowed to handle me. You just couldn't walk up to me and just grab me and put me in chains. You couldn't just walk up to me and arrest me in my kingdom. It's not happening. Read on.
That I should not be delivered to the Jews.
And I would never have been delivered to the Jews. Read on.
But now is my kingdom not from hence.
He says, but he's telling you, but right at this point in time, right now, I'm not in control. I'm not in my power, rulership, and authority at this point in time. It doesn't mean that Christ didn't have any power. It was just not allowed for him to use it at this time because he had a mission to fulfill. He had a mission to fulfill. He still could have used it if he wanted to, but he chose not to because it would have hindered the mission. Just an example of that, go to Matthew chapter 26 verse 53.
Matthew chapter 26 and verse 53.
And this is him again expressing how if he was in his authority, if he was in his kingdom, if he was in his heaven, what it's like in his heaven. Read on.
Thinkest thou that I cannot pray to my Father?
No, hold on. Read verse 51.
Matthew 26 and 51.
Yes, sir.
And behold, one of them which was with Yahweh Shai stretched out his hand and drew his sword.
Now, who had the sword in his hand?
Peter.
Peter had the sword. Peter carried the sword on his hip. So when they approached Christ, it was Malchus, that was the Roman soldier that approached Christ to take him. When he approached Christ, Peter whipped out the sword. Go ahead.
And struck a servant of the high priests and smote off his ear.
And he smote his ear off. Cut his ear smooth off, right? Go ahead.
Smote off his ear. Then Yahweh Shai, then said Yahweh Shai unto him, put up again thy sword into his place. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword.
He said, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. He said, so put your sword away. Then he's going to reinforce him why he should put a sword away. Read on.
Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father?
He says, don't you know that it would be nothing? It would be simple for me to pray to my Father. Read on.
And he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels?
Do you know how many a legion is? A legion is between 2,000 to 5,000 soldiers. Between 2,000 to 5,000 soldiers make up a legion. He says, all I have to do is pray. That's why he's telling Peter, put your sword up. It would be nothing for me to just pray to my Father, and he would deliver and give me between 2,000 to 5,000. That's a legion. Multiply that by 12.
60,000.
That's anywhere between 24,000 to 60,000 angels. That's what. These wouldn't just be regular soldiers. These would be angelic beings. Read on.
But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled?
He said, but if I use my power, then the scriptures will what?
That thus.
It won't be fulfilled.
Then the scriptures won't be fulfilled. So Christ was saying, I have to keep my power subdued. I have to keep my power under control. I have to allow these people to handle me however they're going to handle me. I got to let them, because they're in their power. They're in their control. At this time, it was the Jews getting permission from the Romans to arrest and persecute and crucify Christ.
That was a system of law.
Yeah.
That was a system of law where they were in league with the Roman government. They were independent, partially independent. They still had a back and forth to, dealing with the Roman authority figures, the Roman, politics. But we still have the kind of like the Native Americans today. They still have their own courts, their own system. They have their community, but they still answer to Esau's kingdom.
They still have their tribal laws.
They have their tribal laws,
their tribal rules, and their holidays. They're still able to function as a tribe on their reservation, but they still have a higher power to deal with. They still are completely independent. They're not complete. They still got to get them vaccines. We're gonna say that for another day, but They're still being, these laws are still being enforced on them. You know, they may get tax breaks, and they may get some free education, but they still have to abide by, you know, jurisdiction, American jurisdiction in courts. And that's how it was during the time of Christ. Now, until General Titus destroyed Jerusalem and ransacked Jerusalem completely, they still were able to execute their laws and have their traditions. But eventually, that was put down. But so Christ is explaining that if this was my kingdom, then my servants wouldn't be allowed. You wouldn't be allowed to touch me. So he said, but if I use my power that I have in heaven, that the Most High gives me, then the scriptures would never be fulfilled. So when when a nation is in their heaven, that's when they're in their power, they're in their rulership, and they're in their authority, and they're in their dominion. And that's the time that the Most High has given them to rule on earth. So a lot of nations on earth has been in their heavens. The Egyptians was in their heaven when they were in control. The Romans was in their heaven when they were in control. The Greeks was in their heaven when they were in control. A lot of nations have been given an opportunity to be in their heaven. You know, the kingdom of Esau is in his heaven right now.
Can I post real quick?
Come.
Ephesians 2:2 real fast.
Ephesians 2:2.
Yeah, Ephesians 2:2.
Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 2. Wherein in time past he walked according to the course of this world.
So in time past, most of us, or many of us, walked according to the lifestyle of the society we're in, right? We follow the laws, the rules, and the culture of the society that we're in. Read.
According to the prince of the power of the air.
According to what?
The prince of the power of the air.
According to the prince of the power of the air, which is who?
Hashatan. See.
That's Satan, the negative forces, right? There's righteous angels,
The adversary.
and there's wicked angels, right? Or the enemy, right? Let's go to Luke chapter 4, verse 5 through 6.
Luke chapter 4 and verse 5.
Because Christ said this is not his kingdom, right? Read.
And the devil taking him up into a high mountain, showed unto him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time.
He showed all the kings of the world in a what?
In a moment of time.
Read on.
And the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee.
Why what?
All this power will I give thee.
So Egyptians had a kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was the power of their kingdom? Who's the one that gives the power to have a kingdom?
The Most High.
Oh, yes, he
According to
does.
the scripture.
But on earth, yes.
On earth.
Yeah.
He said, my kingdom is not of this world.
Okay, yeah.
My kingdom is not of this world. He said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Is it on earth right now as it is in heaven?
Mm-mm.
Are we living in divinity right now?
Are we living in paradise?
Are we living in paradise right now? So obviously this is not the Most High style of kingdom. This is somebody else's style of kingdom, right?
Living in gangster's paradise.
Yeah, they're living in
Coolio
They're
said.
living in gangster's paradise. All I do is sing and we sweat so much with the song. We meant to that. So now we're seeing that what? That this world is by the course of the wicked, right? The prince of the power of the air. Now we're just getting more detail about the influence behind that kingdom. Read it again, verse 4, then go down.
Verse 6 or 4?
Verse 5.
Verse 5. Luke chapter 4 and 5. And the devil taking him up into a high mountain.
So Satan took Christ to a high mountain. Read on.
Showed unto him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time.
All the, like Chapter 1 broke down, the Babylonian kingdom, Assyrian kingdom, Egyptian kingdom, Persian Median kingdom, Greek kingdom, Roman kingdom, and then what's the last kingdom? This kingdom, right? Read on.
And the devil said unto him, all this power will I give thee.
All this power will I give thee. Read on.
And the glory of them.
And the what?
And the glory of
The
them.
glory of those kingdoms.
The wealth that comes from being in power.
The wealth, the resources.
Resources, the control, the dominion.
You got the image, you got the power. You can set law. You can create wars, and whenever we create wars, we always get rich out.
Yep.
You think we'll lose resources if you go to war. You think you would spend money, but every time we go to war, we make money because we rob the earth. Read on.
For that is delivered unto me.
That's delivered to who?
Unto me.
Whose power is it to influence these kingdoms?
See.
Read on.
And to whomsoever will I give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, all shall be thine.
And when you look at the religion and the lifestyle of all these kingdoms, they were always what? Wicked. What was the Egyptian kingdom like? Wicked. What was the Roman kingdom about?
Wicked.
What was the Greek Empire about?
Wicked.
What was the Babylonian kingdom about?
Wicked.
What's this kingdom about?
Wicked.
That's the same concept.
Yep.
That's the power behind this kingdom.
That's
So,
how you know who has control, who has dominion, who has influence.
God.
You know, Satan is the entity and the force behind these nations that rule the earth. That's why Christ said, "My kingdom is not of this world." He said, "Because if my kingdom was of this world, my servants would fight, man. They'll fight back. They wouldn't just let you do what you want to do."
God.
There's order in heaven. There's order in heaven. There's structure in heaven. There's no confusion in heaven. Right? So, a great point. Now, how is the kingdom translated? How is the kingdom transferred from one hand to the next? How did the Persians get it from the Babylonians? How did the Babylonians get it from the Assyrians? How did the Greeks get it from the Persian Media Empire? How did the Romans get it from the Greeks?
One empire smite the other.
Let's go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 10, verse 8.
In the Apocrypha?
In the Apocrypha.
10 and 8.
Yes, sir.
Come. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Ecclesiasticus chapter 10, verse 8 reads, because of unrighteous dealing.
It says, because of corruption. Go ahead.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Conquest.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Colonialism.
Yeah.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Imperialism.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Racism.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Socialism.
Because of unrighteous dealings.
Any of the isms.
They're all up.
Whatever ism you want to use. He said, because of unrighteous dealings. This people are subjugated based upon class. Think about how America justified the taking and the robbing of Native American lands. Indians had control of North America. Aztecs had Central America, and the Mayans had Central and South America, and the Incans and Peruvians had, and the Colombians and Amazonians had South America. All these native tribes had their own villages. They had their own currency, whether they traded food or whether they traded feathers or whatever it was that they traded amongst each other.
They had a system.
They had a system. They had their own medicine. They had their own courts of law. They had their own festivals. They had their own holidays. They had their own soldiers. They had their own subgroups, and they had their own language. How is it that one nation comes and justifies and said that everything that I see, manifest destiny is what it's called. Wherever I set my eyes at, and whatever I can see from sea to shining sea, all this land belongs to me. How can you justify that when the land belongs to a people that's already been existing on the land and living on the land and flourishing off the land for years? How can you justify it?
Didn't they also say that God told them that they were allowed to do that?
Who's their God?
Yeah, who's their God? The papal bulls of the Catholic Church, the popes said in law that these people could be subjugated, because what they said was these are savages, these are non-believers. We must give them Christianity. So in the exchange of Christianity and religion, because we're going to give you Christ. So in exchange for giving you Christ, we're going to take your aqueducts, we're going to take your farmland, we're going to take your silver mines, your gold mines, and your jewels, and we're going to kill off your old men, and we're going to impregnate all your women and put your children in our schools, and say it's all done in the name of Christ, because you're savages, because you're untutored sons of the forest, like Andrew Jackson said. You're the untutored sons of the forest. You're not really a civilized people. You're not a civilized people. Yes, sir.
Well, how can they say that when they was eating that Jennifer root and walking on forests and eating lice up out of each other's head? When they came and got us, we wasn't doing none of the above. So which one is not intelligent?
Right.
And which one is?
But he's gonna explain how this happened. Read it again.
Come. Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 8 reads, because of unrighteous dealings.
And because that's fake peace treaties.
Yeah.
You have a book that I like that gives you like a list of all the peace treaties that was made with the Europeans, whether it be Puritans, whether it be Protestants, that they made with the Indians, or just Americans, or even the English that when they got here, or the Spanish, or the French, because all of them had ownership of America at times. You have a book that shows all the peace treaties that was given to the natives, and they were all broken.
Not one was kept.
And there was over like 300 or something. You should bring that.
Yeah.
There was over like 300 or something peace treaties that was broken and denied and said, no, we didn't mean that. Or they were amendments or changes made.
Never mind.
Yeah. Or they just outright just didn't abide to it.
Okay.
He says, through unrighteous dealings, through fake peace treaties, we come in peace. He said, unrighteous dealings, what else?
Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries.
Injuries. You know what? If you don't want to trade with us, we're just going to take it from you.
Yeah.
It's either you're gonna negotiate with us or else.
Or they're gonna do trade with you and give you smallpox blankets.
Right.
Can't win either way.
Disease blankets with mumps and measles, German measles, whooping cough, lice. Not just lice, but all types of foreign. That's biological warfare.
Exactly.
Because that's what that is. That classifies as biological warfare. We're gonna give you something that's gonna knowingly make you sick, to kill you off, to take what's yours. That's why it says through unrighteous dealings. What else?
Injuries.
Injuries through rape, rob, and murder. Go ahead.
And riches got by deceit.
Wow.
And how did they get their riches?
Riches got by deceit.
So this is how nations get into their power, rulership, and authority. It's through conquest. Conquest, imperialism, colonialism is the name of the game. How do you think Vietnam started? People don't realize that the Vietnam War, which is in the 1960s, just ended in 1974. People don't realize that the Vietnam War started because the French got slaughtered and America got involved. Does anybody know why the French got slaughtered in Vietnam? And America had to come get involved and lost hundreds of thousands of young black and Hispanic teenagers that were forced to be drafted into a war? Does anybody know how it got started? Vietnam War started really in the 1920s. The French had still been trying to colonize, like they colonized Africa.
Yeah.
Like they colonized America.
Gosh.
The French were still on a conquest mission.
Still pushing it.
They were still pushing the agenda.
In 1920.
In the 1920s.
They ain't gonna stop, right?
They're not gonna stop. So from the 1920s, the French had already been invading Vietnam and trying to subjugate these little Vietnamese people that live in mud huts and dig tunnels underground and live off the land. But because these people were well situated in the jungle, and they were well situated with the canopy over the jungle and well hidden, the French couldn't. They slaughtered the French completely. The French were still trying to conquest and still trying to pillage people and rob people of their resources, and they lost.
Robbed the wrong ones.
They robbed the wrong ones.
I learned today.
And you know what happened? America got involved, and guess what? Did we win Vietnam?
No.
People don't realize why and how we got in Vietnam. The French was still trying to be imperialist, still trying to colonize, even in the 1900s. You still trying to take people's land and resources.
They're doing it today too, right?
It still hasn't changed.
With
But he
the wall and
said,
stuff.
but he's showing you that this action is how power, rulership, and authority is gotten on earth. Read it one more time.
Come. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit.
Go ahead.
The kingdom
The
is,
what?
The kingdom.
So a nation gets their power, rulership, and authority through subjugating, colonizing, imperializing, and conquering other peoples. This is how Satan allows a nation to get their power. You have to become a ruthless villain in the world to obtain power. None of these kingdoms that we mentioned previously received the kingdom righteously and was given to them fair and square.
God.
It was all gotten through war, murder, lies, deceits, and bloodshed and violence. This is how nations came in power. You have to serve your father Satan in order to get this power. So you have to be ruthless. You have to not care about the people. He said, this is how a kingdom, go ahead.
The kingdom is translated.
Is what?
Is translated.
Go ahead.
From one people to another.
This is how the kingdom, power, rulership, and authority is translated from one people to another. Initially, the natives had power, rulership, and authority until these other people, these conquistadores came in. And these so-called pilgrims came in. And these so-called colonizers came in.
It's fake good guys.
These merchant seafaring men came in.
God.
These explorers came in looking for a route to India. Yeah, right. Yes, sir.
Can I add a precept?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Psalms 49 and verse 11 reads, "Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names."
They call their lands after what?
Their own names.
So they call their land after their own names.
America.
We're gonna call this America.
Colombia. America. America Vespucci, right?
Yep. We're gonna call this place after our own names. We're gonna put our flag. Once our flag is planted in this area, it belongs to us. And this is how people get their power. They have to dominate and subjugate and control and enslave and kill off the indigenous populations. This is how you get your power on earth. This is how America got its power.
They got to be in their heaven.
This is how they got in their heaven. Through rape, rob, and murder and deceit. This is why even in Daniel chapter 9 verse 25? Read that.
Daniel chapter 9. What verse is it?
Verse 25.
Daniel chapter 9.
Hold on.
And verse
8 and 25. Read that.
8.
Daniel chapter 8 and verse 25 reads, "And through his policy."
Start at verse 24.
24.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel chapter 8 and verse 24. "And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power."
So he said, but not by what?
His own power.
Go ahead.
"And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper, and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people."
He's showing you who's the influence. Who is the influence by his power? Satan. Satan is the influence behind all the world power, the world superpowers. Read on.
Verse 25. "And through his policy."
And through his what?
His policy.
Through all his fake policies. We're going to promise you. There's a bunch of promises. We're going to promise you 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah.
We're going to promise you California, Nevada, Texas. We're going to promise it to you. We'll promise to pay you back. You let us use the land just to grow crops on. We'll promise to pay you. It says through his policy. We'll promise you that if you let us drill this oil on this property, we'll pay you a piece of the profits. Through whatever it may be. It says through his policy. Go ahead.
"Also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand."
And this is how these nations get leverage over you. They have fake treaties. They have fake trade policies, fake agreements with you. They come in and they make promises to you. We'll build schools in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
We'll build hospitals in your cities. We'll build community centers. Just give us the land. Let us use the land, and we'll build hospitals, schools, education centers. And then they're giving you diseases from these community centers.
Yeah.
He said this is how they prosper.
So they're trying to help Haiti. Now they're trying to take the resources out of Haiti.
Now they take exactly.
See that? That's recent.
So it's showing you the intention behind these kingdoms and how they get into authority, how they get into power. They use fake policies that are not built off truth. Fake promises. Let us use your water, your reservoirs, and your underground water sources, and we'll pay you a certain amount of money.
Then they want to say it's a corporation. We can't control the corporation.
Right.
So we're going to put a law against this. It never happens.
So, or put your 401k money. You had people jumping out the window in Houston.
Or bankrupt.
Yeah, people jumping out the damn window. They lied to you, saying put all your 401k money in here, and they knew the company was going under, but they made sure that they took out and they sold their stocks of the company before anybody knew. While you in there you've been working for the company for 30 years, and they weren't going to tell you that they sold the company that was going under. But the top execs took their money out, sold their shares off, and then the company fell. And then you work for 30 years for a company, and you have nothing, and you got to start all over. Now you 59, you 65 years old, and you got to start over because your 30 years of work that you put into this pot, you just found out it was a corporate smear campaign, a lie. It was white collar crime.
Yeah.
And then then these guys get caught. Then they get a slap on the wrist. They go to jail for 5 years.
They just cry.
Then they get probation. Damn, you didn't put 30 years of work into a company, and this guy gets probation because he's a first offender. It's white collar crime. It's soft.
Yeah.
It's through his policy. He shall what?
It says he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand.
This is how he elevates himself. This is how he gets leverage. It's through fake policies, fake agreements that don't hold value or weight. God.
St. John 8:44. St. John 8:44.
John chapter 8 and verse 44 reads, Ye are of your father the devil.
You're of your father who?
The devil.
So the power behind these kingdoms is in whose hands are given?
The devil.
The devil, right? And now we're seeing how does the devil operate. Read.
And the lusts of your father.
The desire of your father.
Ye will do.
I'm going to give you fake policies, fake agreements, fake food, fake entertainment,
fake medicine.
That sounds like a devil. That sounds like a deceiver. And I'm going to charge you your hard sweat, work, and tears, years of your life for it. Read.
It says, he was a murderer from the beginning.
And he's what?
He was a murderer from the beginning.
And their spirit is always about killing something, harming something, taking something, destroying something. Read on. This is how they justify wars. This is how they justify conquest. Read.
And abode not in the truth.
And they abode not where?
In the truth.
They're not about the power of the Most High. They're not about the truth. So when the money says, in God we trust, it's talking about the God of the Bible.
No, it's talking about the one in the one that rules the air.
Is their power, the prince of the power of the air. That's who they get their heaven from. Read on.
It says, he abode not in the truth because there is no truth in him.
Because there's no what?
There's no truth in him.
The Most High is not dealing with him. Remember, the Most High's kingdom is where? In heaven. It's not on earth. So we're dealing with whose kingdom?
Satan's kingdom.
But he just hands it to different people. I'm going to hand it to the Romans. I'm going to hand it to the French at this time. I'm going to hand it to the British this time. I'm going to hand it to America this time. I'm going to hand it to China this time. I'm going to hand it to the Egyptians this time. I'm going to hand it to the Babylonians at this time. And in every empire, what's happening? The same set of fake policies, the same destruction, the same negative, the same sexual disorientations. It's all the same concept because it comes from the same source.
Yep. Finish that in Daniel 8 and 25.
Come.
Daniel chapter 8 and verse 25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand.
Go ahead.
And he shall magnify himself in his heart.
And he will say, you know what, I'll be a good leader for you.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be a good leader. I'll be a good master over you. Read on.
And by peace.
And he says, because I'll protect you. See, a lot of times when these European powers came into other countries, they said, you know what? We'll protect you. We have a big military. We have guns. We have ammunition. We have weapons. We'll protect your borders. We'll protect you from foreign invaders. Just trade with us.
Yeah.
As long as you're trading with us, you got unlimited protection from us. What happened in Afghanistan right now?
Wow.
What happened in Afghanistan when we just pulled out of Afghanistan? What happened? Taliban took right on. It didn't even take a day. Matter of fact, it wasn't even a lot of Americans wasn't even. They couldn't even leave the airport yet. The airport was surrounded.
People in the airplane. Hold on, the plane is about to fly off. It's flying in the air, and people are still on the airplane.
They falling off. Too.
Yeah, it's sad. It fell off.
And then you even had where it was undercover operations that America was paying the Taliban to get Americans to the airport. Because that's so all the people that thought democracy was going to be the future of Afghanistan that believed in democracy.
It was not.
And when all the soldiers pulled out, they promised them protection and jobs and as long as we trade with them. You know, Afghanistan is full of resources. And then now we pull out and leave them in the hands of everybody that we made enemies with.
And gave them free money.
Gave them free money and weapons.
And some of them they converted, and then once the Taliban found out about it, they blew their brains out for finding out that they was a people working with America.
Absolutely.
Because they had a list. They had like files and lists of names who they worked with. It's like, oh, we got a list. You're on that list.
Yeah.
That's a bad
thing.
thing.
Our people, but you turned on us.
Right. But and that's how he says he leaves them hanging. He says through peace, I'm gonna protect you. That was the promise. We're gonna protect you. We're gonna take care of you. We're not gonna let nothing happen to you. As soon as we got what we got out of there, and the cost became too expensive to maintain soldiers there, pull out and let the people just survive on your own. Yeah, you gotta figure it out.
Peace is also permission.
They died working for us. That's all they gained, right? They died working for Satan.
Right. Read on. He says. Yeah, that's a great point. Read it.
It says, and by peace shall destroy many.
And by peace he shall what?
Destroy many.
They said this is the force behind the kingdoms of the world. And like Dawiyah was bringing out, who's the spirit behind these powers? Who's the spirit enforcing or allowing these powers to have dominion, rulership, and authority on earth? It's Satan. So when we read about heaven, one form of heaven is when you have power, rulership, and authority on earth. Now go to Matthew chapter 11 verse 12.
Say 11 and verse 12.
Yep.
Matthew chapter 11 and verse 12 reads, and from the days of John the Baptist until now.
Is this written in red?
Come.
It's Christ talking, right? Yahweh Shah, right? Read on.
And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven.
He was referring to the children of Israel. He said the children of Israel what?
Suffereth violence.
Suffereth what?
Violence.
Violence. Go ahead.
And the violent take it by force.
And he says, and the violent take it by what?
Force.
Now, who was he prophesying the coming destruction of? Jerusalem by way of who?
Rome.
By the Romans. He prophesied the fall of Jerusalem way about 30, 40 years before it actually happened. He said, when thou seest Jerusalem compassed about with armies, just know that what?
Destruction is nigh.
The desolation is nigh. It's close. So he's showing you right here, he's saying that the kingdom of heaven, we're not in our power, rulership, and authority. He said it's being taken from us. And it has been taken from us. We're not in our heaven. We're the ones that had our whole identity, power, authority taken and robbed from us and stolen from us. That's why Ezra prayed about this. And go to 2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 15 real quick. Chapter 8 verse 15.
2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 13.
15.
15, Salah.
And somebody else read 2nd Ezra chapter. After this, somebody else get 2nd Ezra 6 and 57.
So 8 and 15, sir?
Yeah, you read 8 and 15.
Come.
Somebody else read 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 57 on down. Read that.
2nd Ezra chapter 8 and verse 15 reads, Now, therefore, Lord, I will speak, touching man in general.
He says, I'll speak in general, talking about man. I'm just talking in general about man. He says, but he's going to specify who his request and his prayer and who he was soliciting for. Read on.
It says, Thou knowest best.
He says, you know best when it comes to man. When you know, he's asking, he's acknowledging, Ezra is acknowledging the fact that whatever happened to man on earth, the Most High knows best. But that's not who he was concerned for. Read on.
But touching thy people.
He says, but concerning thy people. You know what's going to happen with mankind on earth. You know the wickedness that's amongst them. You know the conquest. You know the rulership. You know the rape, rob, murder, and pillaging that they're going to do. He says, but I'm concerned about thy people. That's why he says, but touching thy people. Go ahead.
For whose sake I am sorry.
He says, and I'm not sorry for man's sake. He said, I'm sorry for whose sake? My people. This particular kingdom of heaven. The one that's suffering violence. And the violent take it by force. He said that we just read about in Matthew. That Christ was talking about. This is who the whole Bible is written for. It's written for this exclusive group of individuals. He said, but concerning or touching thy people, read on.
It says, and for those touching my people, it says, 2nd Ezra chapter 8 and verse 15.
Yeah.
Now therefore, Lord, I will speak, touching man in general. Thou knowest best, but touching thy people.
He said, but when it comes to thy people, read on. Then he's going to be very exclusive and very clear. Read on.
For whose sake I am sorry.
He says, I'm sorry for their sake. Read on.
Verse 16. And for thine inheritance, for whose cause I mourn.
He said, I'm crying for these people. And for the fact that they don't have an inheritance. Read.
It says, and for Israel, for whom I am
and
heavy.
And for who?
Israel.
For Israel. He's getting real specific. First he started talking about people in general. Now he's narrowing it down to who he really cares about. This is the kingdom of heaven he's concerned about. Read on.
For whom I am heavy, and for Jacob, for whose sake I am troubled. Verse 17.
And you know Jacob is who?
Israel.
Israel representing who?
Israelites.
Israelites. Read on.
Verse 17. Therefore will I begin to pray before thee for myself and for them.
He said, I'm going to pray for myself and I'm praying for them. Read on.
For I see the falls of us that dwell in the land.
He said, so when Christ is saying the kingdom of heaven suffers violence and the violent take it by force, who was he referring to?
The other nations.
The other nations are the one taking us by force. Just like we've been taken into slavery by force. Like we've been taken into conquest by force.
God.
We've been westernized by force or Americanized by force. Just like our language was stolen from us by force.
Put in Carlisle schools. Got putting these Canadian schools and American schools, and they gotta change their names and
they gotta be given names like Bobby and Richard and Robert and Luke and Matthew.
Yeah, but that's not their native name.
And their indigenous name was taken from them.
God.
Their water sources was taken from them. What do you think Standing Rock was about? We're going to build a pipeline straight through Native American protected burial grounds. We're going to build a damn oil pipeline straight through the damn your main water source that feeds your whole people and your whole tribe and your whole land with your animals. We're going to build a damn pipeline straight through it and don't give a damn about it.
And they can't do anything right because the ocean's been, to this day, 2021, we still got oil spills out.
Mississippi River had a big ass oil spill.
Just recently?
Not too long ago.
Off the coast of California,
crazy, bro.
Yeah, the oil spill that we don't even know if the oil spill in the Gulf is really capped off and not going in.
Kyle
I
said
was
it's
reading
still
that
going on.
that they doing it on purpose they burn it to I forget I mean, you should do some reading about it, but they doing it on purpose. They
You know,
literally said
you know, when that oil spills, that oil spills. Yes, they get sued. You know, they got to pay EPA and OSHA. You know, they sue them for environmental destruction, but they still operate. And then the chemicals that they use to clean up the oil spills, which is the caustic. The caustic is worse than the damn oil. It's more harmful to the environment than the damn oil itself, which is destructive to the environment.
Talking about the corrosive.
Yeah, corrosive.
Yeah, because that's what Kyle be talking about. How like
It comes back and it poisons the land.
It poisons the water.
He was talking
Fresh
about
water.
Revelation.
So now he's showing. He said this is my concern. I'm concerned for these people, man, because he says, for I see the falls of us that dwell in the land. He said, man, I see what we go through, what we have to deal with. That's why I said my focus is these people. I'm not talking about just man in general. These Israelites. That's who I'm concerned about. Because I can see what the hell that they're catching. They're not in their kingdom. He said the kingdom of heaven suffered violence. That particular kingdom of heaven has no power, rulership, and authority on earth. We don't have our own military. We don't make our own money. We don't have our own money on our dollars. We don't have freedoms and liberty like we did before we were colonized. So now go to
Jeremiah 8:21. So what we're showing there's multiple heavens, and we're dealing with that first heaven is what? It's governmental. It's power, it's rulership, it's authority on earth. Well, guess what? If you're a child of the Most High, if you're a child of God, you're going to suffer in their heaven.
Yep.
If you're in the heaven of the Gentiles, you're going to suffer under their heaven. Billy and John are going to school, and they have trust funds. They're going to be okay.
Or they're going to have somebody take their college exams. Their parents are going to pay a little extra.
Yeah.
And they're gonna,
that's what's happening.
And they're going to pay a little extra. They got a guy who can pass tests. He can whip through the SATs like nothing.
Wow.
He's mastered the SATs.
Wow.
So they're going to go ahead and say that you played soccer and you played sports and you're a member of the lacrosse team. And they're going to have this other guy for a little hefty fee fill out your SAT scores, your entry-level exams to get into these Ivy League schools, drop a couple of thousand, and then you operate and get an education while hundreds of us have been denied that same education, who have fought tirelessly to turn in homework and couldn't get in. Because it's not made for us.
It's rigged the whole time.
It was rigged, man.
Right down there at Roosevelt High School, brothers and sisters going down through that.
It's rigged. But read on. I like what you're saying.
Jeremiah chapter 8 verse 21. For the hurt of the daughter of my people.
So we're going. We saw how the indigenous populations have to suffer. Even to this day, the environment has to suffer. Even to this day, in their kingdom, in their heaven. They're in there. You're not black. Our people want to be coconuts and Oreos out.
Mm-hmm.
And they want, and the Gads call them apples out. They call people apples sometimes out. And you red on the outside, and you're wet on the inside out. I like that term out. But the point is, they want to fit in to the society, but the majority of their population is still suffering on a historical level. And it just occurred. You just go to the newspaper. Look, you're gonna find your people. Go to the east side right now. Who's buying the houses on the east side? This is ours, San Antonio, right? We had our own area. We were doing de-gentrification, right? It's been historically black forever, right? We have Issachar there too now, which is fine.
Well, they've been there for a while too.
Yeah, Issachar been there for a minute. But the issue is, who's buying it up?
Was it historically black? Didn't the Germans have it first and then?
No.
Then the brothers moved in? Because now they're coming back.
Even when if you want to look at the history of San Antonio, even when you look at places like Kirby, Kirby was known as Hobo Town. You know why it was called Hobo Town? They took that term away because it was derogatory. But it was for a long time known as Hobo Town.
I know that.
You know why it was called Hobo Town?
Because blacks ran.
You know how blacks got there? They were hobos. They were trained. They jumped on trains and they jumped in train carts. And it's major train stations there. It's a major train depot there. So even in San Antonio, when you look at how the doors of the trains open on the right, so as the commerce is flowing from this direction, from east to west, they jump out of the train on the right, and wherever they jump out on the train at is where they start to civilize.
Yeah, cut your phone off, bro.
This is where they become.
Hey, Stan.
That's what he's trying to do.
They're cutting off. Okay. So this is where they become native to the area, if you want to say that. So same thing with Kirby being initially called Hobo Town. Hobos jumped off the train looking for work, coming in from small country towns, and it was full of them. It became full of a city of people that were called hobos. Wow. And this is how they even had a hobo festival.
Yeah.
No, don't joke.
Wow.
But when you look at the history, this is how we had to find work. We had to come in somehow. If Issachar came in crossing the border, we had to come in from hopping on trains and jumping off trains. We still had to come into cities to find work. And wherever we jumped off the train at, that's where we settled at. And that became the neighborhood. And that became the community. Because that was the place of work. So if you look at how, but as Dawiyah's bringing out, we suffer. We're on the bottom. That's why I said, if we can hold that real quick, go to Proverbs 29 and 2.
Yeah, so it's all right.
Yeah, I'm so you want to finish that? Yeah.
It's all good. We're same point.
Proverbs chapter 29 and 2. Read that real quick.
Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 2. When the righteous are in authority.
He's telling you when the righteous are in authority. When the righteous are in their heaven, so to speak. When the righteous bear rule. When the righteous is in their power, rulership, and authority on earth. What is the quality of life for the people when the righteous are in authority? Read on.
The people rejoice.
What is the state of mind of the people when the right people are in rulership?
The people rejoice.
The people rejoice. They're happy. There's love. There's no need to steal because there's plenty to go around. There's no need to be desperate because the estate of the environment is good. That's why he says when the righteous bear authority, the people do what? Rejoice. Read on.
When the wicked beareth rule.
He says, but when the wicked bear rule, when the wicked get in their kingdom, when the wicked gets in their power, rulership, and authority, what is the state or the quality of life for the people when the wrong individuals are in power? Read on.
The people mourn.
The people suffer. And that's what Dawiyah is reading about in Jeremiah.
Real quick, get Jeremiah 8:21.
Jeremiah 8:21. For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I hurt.
For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I what?
Hurt.
Read on.
I am black.
He's looking at the women of his nation. What's happened to the women? What's the STD rate right now? What's the rate of fatherless homes right now? What's the rate of broken marriages right now?
Abortion rate.
What's the abortion rate right now? Those are good statistics to prove that we're not in a good position right now.
What's the prison rate?
What's the prison rate right now?
Incarceration rate.
What's the suicide rate right now? These rates are going up, especially for our women. Much of people want to say, you can't deal with them, you can't live without them. Listen, with no women, no babies, man. And then we have women, they have the babies. But we can't influence our children anymore. These are elements of a society that shows that there's dysfunctionality on our part in their heaven. Because their heaven is not from the Most High, it's from Satan. And we're suffering in their heaven. That's the benefit of their heaven.
So when they're in their heaven, we are now what?
We're not in our
heaven. We're in our hell.
There you go. Their heaven is our hell. When they were in Rome, they're the glory of Rome. It was so amazing. But where are we?
Gladiators, fighting lions.
Fighting lions and fighting animals out.
And doing the Olympics.
Being destroyed.
Wrestling naked.
Being completely destroyed. When we were in Egypt, it's like, oh man, look how our people to this day, man, Egypt was so deep, man. It was so amazing. What do Hebrews do every day for work in Egypt, right? Get in that hot sun, build these pyramids, and burn up all day. This kingdom right here, what you finna do? The shadow of Egypt. You finna work and get old and not get no retirement. You finna work until you die. That's this kingdom. I ain't no retirement out.
If it was 150 years ago, you'd be picking cotton till your fingers are numb and tore up.
Exactly.
And you'd be barefoot, bleeding on the feet with no shoes.
Exactly.
We wore our clothes till they disintegrated off our bodies. It wasn't too long ago. And if you had something to say about it, you get lynched.
Quick. So everybody wants to go to heaven, but whose heaven is it?
Right. That's
Who's
why,
heaven you in right now?
And that's why Ezra said, now somebody read Ezra chapter 6, verse 57. Great point.
Second Ezra.
Yes, sir.
Second Ezra chapter 6 and 57.
Read that.
It says,
It's too buff, man. It's too buff to get out of that chair. That's slow, right?
You said second Ezra what?
Chapter 6, verse
6
57.
verse 57. It says, and now, O Yahweh, behold, these heathen which...
These what?
These heathen.
Go ahead.
Which have ever been reputed as nothing.
He said they've always had a reputation to not be anybody sufficient or substantial. They've never been a person or people to follow after and to pattern your lifestyle after. They've never been a people of a high nobility and high society. Read on.
It says, these heathen which have been ever reputed as nothing have begun to be lords over us.
And they've begun to be what?
Lords over us.
They're now our lords. They're now our masters.
Yep.
We're now subjugated under their power, rulership, and authority. We're now under their control. They're our masters. They're in their heaven. Read on.
And to devour us.
And they're devouring us. That's why we make up privatized prisons, state prisons, federal prisons. No matter which one you choose, we still make up the majority of the population. Correctional facilities, youth correctional facilities, youth correctional programs, we still make up the majority of those populations. Go ahead.
Verse 58, it says, but we thy people whom thou hast called thy firstborn.
He said we're the ones that the Most High called his firstborn. Read on.
Thy only begotten and thy fervent lover.
The Most High loved us more than anybody. Read on.
And are given into their hands.
And we're given into what?
Into their hands.
We've been given into their hands. Now they're in their heaven, and they have power, rulership, and authority over us. They could have a draft tomorrow, and if you don't go, you go to prison. You know, they had laws even after slavery where, you know, you weren't allowed to just be a derelict and without a job. If you were found without a job after slavery, with them Jim Crow laws, you were immediately put on a chain gang. And you could be put on a chain gang for up to 20 years just because you didn't have a job. Because you didn't have a job and you would just let go of slavery.
People don't hire you anyway.
Why pay for something that you normally get for free? So you could have. So we've been. He said we've been in this position under our enemies. Read on.
If the world now be made for our sake.
Initially, the world was made for us. We were supposed to rule the world and have preeminence in the world. Read on.
Why do we not possess an inheritance?
How come we don't get any of the resources and the benefits and the wealth that's accumulated amongst all these nations in power? We do the most work and receive the less. We do the most work. We were most instrumental in the building up of these other nations' economies. But we receive none of the wealth from it. We receive handouts, food stamps, welfare, Section 8 housing. We get the junk and the trash. A lot of us when these cities come up with ideas about where they're going to put the city dump, where do they put it at?
You know what's going to be at.
Black,
You already know where it's going to be, where the land is cheapest.
Then they make parks.
Then after about 10 years of being a city dump, where it's damn contaminated the soil and the water and the air, then they cover it up with dirt and make a park for your kids to play on. Yep. Then they build a neighborhood on top of it, and then sell it to you at a high price, which used to sit on a damn dump. A lot of these big cities that have these chemical plants, these power companies, with contaminated trash and water. A lot of these are instrumentally put in low-income areas. Because you know what? Who cares about them? Who cares? Let them deal with it. So nobody cares about the arsenic or the lead poison,
The cancer alley.
or the cancer, or the methane gas being released from it on a daily basis. Who cares?
They had their garbage the cheapest way they can.
It's in our neighborhoods when you do the research. But that's why I said, man, we've done the most work to build up the economy of these nations and the wealth of these nations. He said, but we don't see none of the resources. Read on.
It says, if the world now be made for our sakes, why do we not possess an inheritance with the world?
Read on.
How long shall we endure?
He said, how long is this going to last where there's an imbalance? There's an imbalance where we're not in our authority. We're not in our rulership. We don't have the power to just go where we want to go. Live where we want to live. Read on.
Chapter 7.
No, that's it. Now, yeah, I got something we want to bring out too.
Something wants point. Go to Job 24, verse 1.
In verse 1, right?
Yes, sir.
Come. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Job chapter 24, verse 1 reads, Why? Seeing times are not hidden from the Almighty.
So the Most High sees all these times, right? Read on.
Do they that know him not see his days?
Read on.
Some remove the landmarks.
Some do what?
Some remove the landmarks.
All the Native American burial grounds.
Some remove the landmarks.
All the certain areas, all the communities we were at, Hobo City, Hobo Town, which is the tradition of our people trying to create a new city and live. Read on.
Some remove the landmarks.
The east side of San Antonio, where we had our own stores, our families came from
Or
there.
the inner city populations that we once ruled, and whether it was Black Wall Street or what, where we had, a pride about us, where education mattered, where community mattered, where you can leave your doors open, where you can borrow from your neighbor, where you can ask somebody to watch your kids and they'll look out for you. You didn't have to worry about your kids, because if so and so down the street saw your kids, they was gonna give them a ride to take care of them or feed them, or even house them.
I remember them days.
Read on.
Some remove the landmarks.
Read on.
They violently take away flocks.
This is twofold. And we had those of us that were trying to have something. A lot of people that got lynched were Israelite business owners. We had something going for ourselves. They couldn't stand the idea of us succeeding.
Yep.
So they went ahead and tried to steal our property, bait us to fight with them so they get the authorities on us, or our children being our flocks. They violently take away our children. Read on.
They violently take away flocks and feed thereof.
And they feed off our children. Put them in the prison industrial complex. Put them in the juvenile system. Yep. Read on.
They drive away the ass of the fatherless.
An ass is what you feed yourself with. An ass is what you use to plow, is what you use to get work done.
Right.
So the fatherless, this is their way to feed themselves. They have to have some kind of ability to feed themselves. You need an ass. You need some type of method or way.
Labor mechanism.
Some kind of labor mechanism to feed yourself. But what do? They strategically take away the labor mechanisms so that you have to sell drugs, so that you have to prostitute, so that you have to sit here or work for the 25-cent job or per hour job. They're funneling you into their game. Really, they're funneling you into their game to be dependent. Read.
Come. They drive away the ass of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox for a pledge.
They take away the widow's ox for a pledge. Single parent mothers and also just grandmothers. They take advantage of our grandmothers. Our grandmothers got to sell their houses to these stupid ass laws.
Taxes.
They got to pay $5,000 a year.
Accelerated taxes.
Accelerated taxes that after so many months, the interest goes berserk. You gotta sell it. Yes, sir.
No, I was gonna say my grandma went through that. Just as far as in her buying the house.
Right.
Yeah.
She bought a house, paid it off, and couldn't afford the taxes on it because she couldn't control the tax. She don't control taxes. So because she don't control taxes, because she's not in her power, she's not in her rulership and authority, she's not in her kingdom, she's subjugated to now have to follow the tax rate or whatever the county says that this house now is worth. And if you don't pay it, like Dawiya's bringing out, that accelerated tax rate you get so behind that the interest rate on the taxes damn near doubles every month. Well, it not doubles, but incrementally it gets so outstanding that there's no way to catch up. Then you get on a payment plan to pay for the previous year, and the new year's taxes are already rolling around, and they're higher than the previous year.
They're trying to foreclose on you.
And then they foreclose you. Then the bank foreclose on the house that you paid off. Then the lawyers take it back, and then they buy it up, and then they resell it, and the bank makes more money.
And that's their little game.
I'm not sure the last time you seen what Poncetta looked like over there on the east side.
Where what looks like?
Poncetta, street
Poncetta?
right there. I mean, not too far from these terraces.
Right. They rebuilt it up.
Man, they got nice houses over there.
Yeah.
Anytime they invest money into that community that before previously they would never put money in, they didn't give a shit about that neighborhood when it was during the crack epidemic. They didn't care about investing into that neighborhood, putting street lights up, putting sidewalks on the street. How many streets that still got no sidewalks?
No sidewalks.
But when certain people come into that area, that are increasing the value of the properties and increasing the tax rate, now there's money coming into the neighborhood. Other people are coming into the community. It's being gentrified. So now the taxes go through the roof. And so now it goes from your grandmother's house, your great-grandmother's house, to now being the last house on the block where you knew the neighbors.
Exactly.
Now you don't know anybody.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir.
Remember we was in Wheatley Heights, and the neighborhood was like, it went from bad, and then it looked good all of a sudden, like towards like the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, not we was there.
If you're the wine.
It just showed you.
And another trick. They say it's through their policy. They cause craft to prosper in their hand. Another trick now is to call your neighborhood. It's historical.
Yeah.
That terminology. Oh, you live in an historical neighborhood. That term and that stigma or tag historical in your neighborhood automatically increase your neighborhood taxes to 30% higher.
They're an invasive species.
Automatically. Just because they now classified your neighborhood as historic. So now you got to pay 30. You got a 30% tax hike.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. It's ridiculous.
We don't. That's crazy. Okay.
Verse 4. They turn the needy out of the way.
They turn their needy out of the way. They're the ones that put them in that way.
Right.
They break the needy.
Right.
Read on.
The poor of the earth hire themselves together.
And you find them under bridges. You find them all living in one house.
Right.
You find them sitting there
living in alleys.
Living in alleys.
Homelessness now is an epidemic.
Gotta keep going through this scripture. Read on.
Behold, as wild asses in the desert, go they forth to their work.
So they busting their ass we sell oil, but they're going in the oil fields, all right?
Right.
They're going in these weird neighborhoods out all over, driving cross country, working, doing these construction work, and send their money back to their house they finna lose when they get older anyway. They're going all across the country to feed their families.
Yep. Taking jobs out of state.
Now they can't be home. Dad can't be home because he gotta do a hard ass job. Make sure that house stays, that rent and that mortgage stays paid. Read on.
Rise in beat times for a prey.
Read on.
The wilderness yielded food for them and for their children.
The wilderness yielded food for them and for their children. Meaning what? We're living in the jungle. And we gotta survive any way we have to survive to feed ourselves. So everybody don't go up there and go work for it the right way. Some gotta do it the wrong way to feed their family.
There's no justification in that either.
God, we're
not justifying that either.
But this is a condition of being in their kingdom, their heaven, under their power, their rulership, and their authority, who they got from, Satan, right? Through killing, murdering, raping, destroying. Yep. Read on.
Come. They reap everyone his corn in the field.
So all the work we do, they're benefiting from our hard work.
Yeah, every dollar you make, they take about what, like 40%?
It's taxed.
So you get about 60% of a dollar you make.
Exactly. You get a paycheck, it's taxed.
By the time they tax it, from the time you get your check, it's already been taxed.
Yeah.
And then by the time you purchase things and pay your bills, that has other tax on it. So by the time you get your money, it's about 50 to 60% or 60 cents to the dollar.
Yeah.
Is actually what you're left with.
Yeah.
On top of inflation. So it's like they're designing you to be poor. Read on.
And they gather the vintage of the wicked.
And we have to gather the vintage of the wicked. You know what that means? We have to beg for food stamps. We got to beg for assistance. We got to beg for crumbs.
Government assistance.
We have to. The wicked are the ones that have all this store. They have surpluses, man. Well, how much, John, are we gonna sit here and stack up for ETB this year?
They got a budget.
We have a budget, guys. We're cutting the budget this year, so your card number's gonna change. The amount of food you're gonna have per month's gonna change. Or hey, if you vote for us, we're gonna increase the surplus so you can have more of our crumbs, of the money that you actually earned that you came and have, because we control it. So what does that mean? It's that they gather the vengeance of the wicked. We're busting our ass, and we still need assistance. Read on.
They cause the naked to lodge without clothing.
Read on.
That they have no covering in the cold.
And you know that because you go on the street right now and you see what's going on.
People living in their cars. More than ever, you got people. Go to any truck stop, you're gonna find 4 to 5 families sleeping in their cars, and that's how they live. And they just that's what they resort to, because cost of living is on the increase, rent is on the increase, housing market is increasing. You're getting boxed out of your own neighborhoods, you're getting boxed out of your own community. Can't afford to live where you grew up at. Too expensive.
And people think they don't need the Most High to survive. Right?
Yep.
It's already bad alone. You're gonna need the Most High. Read on.
Verse 8. They are wet with the showers of the mountains.
Read on.
And embrace the rock from want of a shelter.
Everybody don't have that cozy home to be in. That's why he's driving so far to take care of his family. Read on.
They pluck the fatherless from the breast.
They do what?
Pluck the fatherless from the breast.
Because these mothers, for the hurt of the daughter of my people and my hurt, these women can't keep a man. So what happens? They sit here and raise a child on their own. And what happens? Somebody got called CPS.
Yeah.
Because they can't always manage their affairs properly. So what happens? They end up plucking that child from the mother's breast. That's what happens. The child ends up in the system.
Well, the mother has to work the whole time, and the baby can't get that nurturing, so he's naturally designed to go into the the streets or whatever you want.
He gonna go to the streets because
Well,
guess what?
Mama works that much, and then somebody calls because the baby ain't getting accurate care, and the baby still get to it.
It's
and the mama ain't doing nothing wrong.
Cause it's a sign that we're living under a wicked system.
Right.
But that wicked system is what? Them and their kingdom. Their prosperity is our poverty.
Yep. That's the end result for us. When they're in their kingdom, we mourn, we suffer, we get displaced, we get put on the bottom.
Their kingdom is
Yep. I'm gonna read this last point, and I'm done with this point. Read on.
They pluck the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge of the poor.
They take a pledge of the poor. I mean, they pretend like they really give a damn about these poor people. They don't give a damn, because they're the same ones that benefit from them being poor.
The pledge is the donation centers.
Yeah, they have those
fundraisers and pledge drives.
And they keep food banks.
Food banks, but food banks do help. But as far as these other pledges, these other non-profit organizations that you throw a lot of money to, and you find out that the money never gets trickled down to the people.
Never.
You know, they made $100 million. They brought $100 million in this non-profit status, but only $10 million went to the actual community. And then of that community, they only put it in certain areas for certain people to benefit. So it never reached the people who have the actual need. So even those are scams sometimes.
They're taking pledges of the poor.
They're
calling you, hey, you want to pledge some money for us to help us out?
Or how about you take the change and just go ahead and just round it up to the nearest dollar and take the change and donate it.
Yeah.
You don't know where that money's going.
Where is it going?
That's the real pyramid scheme.
Right.
You heard of Dare, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go on that point, bro. Okay. Thank you. Read on.
They cause him to go naked without clothing, and they take away the sheaf from the hungry.
They take away the sheaf from the hungry. They take away the nutrition from the hungry. Yeah, they hungry, and they're getting food stamps, but the food they're getting, their neighborhoods are garbage. The actual stores, the actual quality of food in the same HEBs, the same corporation, but the quality of food is not the same as other neighborhoods.
And then they're getting the stamps and buying unhealthy food, so the white man still.
It could be the same. It could be the same company, and they have different ingredients. How come these ingredients is the same drink?
What I'm saying, they get the stamps and go buy junk food that's not even healthy.
Because
so
listen,
the white man
They say my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Yeah. They still kill
because
them.
we don't know how to eat properly.
They gave you something. They gave you
we're destroyed because we're in this situation because we're in a bad condition.
Bad health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we're living in their kingdom. We're in their heaven.
This is the result when you're in their environment, when they have the power, and they make the rules, and they have authority.
Read verse 11.
Verse 11 reads, which make oil within their walls and tread their pine presses.
Yeah, read it clear, bro.
Line,
please. Read it clear, 11.
Which make oil within their walls.
So we make oil within our walls. We be busting our ass. Read.
And tread their wine presses.
We go tread their wine press. We go their jobs, their companies. Read on.
And suffer thirst.
And we still don't have enough.
We bring trillions of dollars worth of resources to this economy and reap a small percentage of the benefits, almost none. We're responsible for at least, which the new numbers I read just the other day, about $4 trillion worth of economic value to this country, but we don't benefit none of it. We have the smallest percentage of actual wealth being redistributed to us versus per dollar of what we're extending and giving out. Suffering, man.
It's not fair, and this is what happens when you're in someone else's heaven. That's their niggas being in the bottom is their heaven. Issachar had dying to get across these waters, trying to survive. That's their heaven. Native Americans stuck on this land that has no real resources. Dirt floors. It's bad.
Tumbleweeds.
You gotta go in city to get water. You don't even got running water. You don't got none.
Mud huts.
Look at these.
In the 21st century, you living in a mud hut.
Yeah.
In a first world society, one of the wealthiest societies on the earth, and you still got people within this nation that still live in mud huts.
No electricity out.
What does that show? That's the result of them being in their kingdom and us not being in ours. That's the result of it. So when you read the Bible, when you read about a nation being in their heaven or heaven, it's not just talking about paradise. It's talking about a nation of people that's in their power, rulership, and authority. And obviously we're not in ours. And that's why Ezra was crying, saying, how long is this going to be? How long is it going to be where we don't have an inheritance? But the world was really made for us. This doesn't make any sense. So now the next form of heaven, let's go to Genesis chapter 1. So the first form of heaven is what? Class.
The firmament.
Nope.
Power.
Okay.
Rulership,
authority,
and authority, right?
On earth.
On earth, which is power. You make the rules. You have the resources, right?
You have dominion. You have control. You make the laws.
What's the rulership? You can do what you want to do when you want to do it. That's why there's black laws and white laws. Right? Cocaine in a rock form versus cocaine in the powder. Right?
Yep.
Different sentences.
One is probation, and the other one is 25 to life.
Same amount though.
Say.
One likes it powder, one likes it hard. Right?
Genesis chapter 1. Read verse 6.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. And the heavenly Father said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters.
Now the second heaven, but go ahead and read on.
And let it divide the waters from the waters.
Go ahead.
And the heavenly Father made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And the heavenly Father called the firmament heaven.
And it says, and Yahweh called the firmament what?
Heaven.
Heaven. So this heaven that he's talking to in Genesis chapter 1 is talking about the ozone layer. Write that down. The firmament is the ozone layer. Now we're going to break this down real quick. We're going to break this down. This second heaven is the ozone layer, the firmament. Now, let's get it's finish. Read down to verse read up one more time to verse 6, so we can break it down now.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. And the Most High said, "Let there be a firmament
Now
in
the
the
definition
midst."
of the word firmament is ozone layer or visible arch of the sky. Write that down. A visible arch of the sky.
You see, when you go outside, you can see like the little. It's like a slight circle out.
Yeah.
Rainbow, right?
Not necessarily a rainbow.
No, I'm saying like when they see, you can see it arch.
You can see it bend.
Yeah.
It says, so this ozone layer, which is also, this firmament known as the ozone layer, is also defined as a visible arch of the sky. Next definition, a vault of heaven supporting waters above.
Wow.
A vault of heaven supporting waters above. A vault of heaven supporting waters above. Next definition, considered by the Hebrews as solid and supporting waters above. So we're gonna explain this right here. So let's go back now to Genesis chapter 1 verse 6 one more time.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. And the Most High said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the water."
Now he said, let there be a firmament, or this clear vault that's going to do what? In the midst of the waters, because water exists in three forms. What are the three forms that water exists?
Liquid, solid, steam.
Solid, liquid, gas.
Solid, liquid, gas. Steam is the gas. Liquid is water. Is when it's called water, but in the solid it's called what? Ice. So water exists in three forms, in three states. It's not always just in one dimensional. So water is two molecular atoms put together. H2O, two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom put together. This is what makes water. Now, they're put together by their electrons that float around the atoms. There's an electronic bond that happens between the two atoms of hydrogen and the one of oxygen. Those electrons that are shared together create this magnetic force. When they're together, it's a chemical combination. That chemical combination is called H2O. Scientifically, we call it water. But it can function in three states. It can be the solid, the liquid, or the gas. Now, what the Most High is explaining right here in Genesis chapter 1, read it again, verse 6.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. And the Most High said, "Let there be a firmament."
He says, let there be a layer. Let there be an arch. Which is going to do what? Which is an ozone layer. Firmament is an ozone layer. Go ahead.
In the midst of the waters.
So it's going to be in the midst of the waters. And what is its purpose? Read on.
And let it divide the waters.
And it's going to do what?
Divide.
So the purpose of this arch, or this vaulted, what does he say? A visible arch of the sky, or vault of heaven supporting waters above. What's the purpose of this arch or this vault?
To support the water.
It's to support the waters that are where? Or to divide the waters from where? Go ahead.
Let divide the waters from the waters.
From the waters from the waters, showing you that the waters that are in solid form or liquid form will be divided from the waters that are in a gas form. Because the ozone is still made up of gases. It's still made up of hydrogen. It still has oxygen. It's just not seen because it's in this molecular form. It's in an atomic state. It's very small. But there's still elements and there's still water in the atmosphere. So he says, let this arch divide the waters which are under the firmament, which you would see as rain, or you would see as ice, or you would see as snow. In that state, being divided from the waters that are outside of the ozone layer, which is still elements that are just unseen to the eye. They haven't been combined yet to create the water, but there's still water in the atmosphere. That's how they know that certain planets are made out of ice and certain planets have water on them, because they may just be in an ice form. That's why researchers look for water erosion or ancient sources of water on other planets, because they know that water is necessary to support life. So the minute that they know that they could find water on another planet, or they could find ice on another planet, then they can melt the ice and turn it into what? Water. And still support life. That's the whole purpose of some of these explorations, outer space, is to see where else could we as mankind live but still sustain life. So the Most High created the heavens. Isaiah, matter of fact, read Isaiah chapter 45 verse 18 real quick.
Isaiah chapter 45 and verse
18.
18. Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 18. For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, the Most High himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it.
He said he did what?
He have established it.
So regardless of what man tries to do as far as going outside of his realm of scope of life, the Most High established earth as a place, as a dwelling for mankind. Regardless of man's explorative nature or desires to go to infinity and beyond, regardless of where man wants to go, the Most High said he established earth as a dwelling place for man. But that's not enough for some people. Some people want to see what's outside of this element. But the Most High ordained this place as a place for man. Matter of fact, hold this and go to, or let this go and go to Ecclesiastes in the Apocrypha, chapter 43, and somebody read verse 1. And before that, let's go to 2nd Esdras in the Apocrypha, chapter 16, verse 55. Before we go to Ecclesiastes 43 and 1, let's go to 2nd Esdras chapter 16 and somebody read verse 55.
2nd Esdras chapter 16 verse 45.
55.
Which spake but the word.
And all the Most High did was spake the word, like in Genesis. And the Most High's word moved upon the waters, and his word was upon the face of the deep. So the Most High just spake these things into existence. So the Most High spake the word, read on.
Let the earth be made.
And the Most High spake the word, let the earth be made. And in Genesis, it was the Alahayim, or the angels, or angelic beings, Christ and the angels, that actually did the actual work or the chemical composition or makeup in the creation story. It's the angelic powers that created the earth. They were the ones responsible for the physics, for the chemistry, for putting together what we call Mother Nature today. They were the ones responsible for the building blocks and the engines of creation. They set forth the engines of creation to see the things that we see now today that initially was invisible. So it was these angelic beings that went to work building these things based upon the order from the Most High. The Most High gave the word, the angels went to work. And we know that this creation took 6,000 days. In the seventh day, 7,000 years, it was the Most High rested. But it took 6,000 years to create the earth. So it wasn't no fast process. Go ahead.
Which spake but the word, let the earth be made, and it was made.
Read on.
Let the heaven be made, and it was created.
And they said, let the heavens be made, and it was created. Talking about this firmament and the celestial bodies outside the firmament. And it was created. Read on.
In his word were the stars made.
And in his word were the stars made. Read on.
And he knoweth the number of them.
Now, regardless of what new telescope that the so-called white man comes up with, whether it be the Hubble telescope or whether it be some distant planet that a new observatory that we put together to try to see even further than the natural eye or further than just what man's eye can allow. We're always looking into the distant or into the deep, trying to find new stars, the origin of stars, the birthplace of universes, the birthplace of galaxies, the Higgs boson particle, where did life begin, where did atoms or single cell organisms begin from. We're always looking through theory about who created what, and we have theories based upon what particles that were invisible were behind what we see today as in organic material on Earth. So it was the Most High who was responsible for this. And regardless of the limitations of man, the Most High said he knows every star by name. Every last one of them.
It's crazy, bro.
There's stars that we haven't even begun to even come into our sight. Have yet to even be transmitted to us through superconductor telescopes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Verse 57. He searches the deep and the treasures thereof.
Go ahead. He knows what's at the bottom of the ocean. Read on.
He hath measured the sea.
He knows the quantity, the weight, how many drops. He knows what the composition of the sea is made of. He knows the volume of the sea. Read on.
And what it containeth.
And what's in the sea. Read on.
He hath shut the sea in the midst of the waters.
He says he held the sea under control in the midst of the waters. So he got the sea in proximity of where it belongs, whether it's being congealed in the North Pole or whether it's being congealed in the South Pole. He's got control over the ocean and the currents and what's in it. Read on.
Says he has shut the sea in the midst of the waters, and with his word hath he hanged the earth upon the waters.
He says, and based on his word, he hanged the earth upon the what?
Elements.
Upon the elements, solid, liquid, and gas. So there's the earth. It has a firmament around it. There's a firmament or ozone layer surrounding, encompassing the earth to support life that needs water. And then there's also elements. That same elements that made up the earth are still floating in the atmosphere. Read on.
Verse 59. He spread out the heavens.
He said he spread out the heavens. Go ahead.
Like a vault.
Like a what?
Like a vault.
Like a vault. The definition of vault is a continued arch. He's showing you that the earth is not flat. He's showing you that the earth, another definition in Hebrew of the word vault means not only a circular arch, or a continued arch, but it means to be circular. So he's killing the idea also at the same time. I don't know who came up with that the earth is flat. He's telling you that the earth is circular. And that the earth is encompassed with the circular arch, which he calls biblically a vault. It's a circular arch. That's what it does. It encompasses the earth. And it separates the waters inside the earth so you can breathe ozone, or you can breathe hydrogen and oxygen mixed together. And if you go outside of that ozone layer, you cannot breathe. And then scientifically, these layers of ozone have been divided by man and given names by man. What the Most High calls the firmament, man calls the exosphere. Write this down. What the Most High calls the firmament, man what he calls it the exosphere. The exosphere sits about 700 to 190,000 kilometers above the earth, surrounding the earth. That's the one of the last layers of atmosphere that so-called scientists have seen, or they say exist, that encompass the earth. But it's all encompassing of the firmament. The next layer of atmosphere under the exosphere is the mesosphere. The mesosphere is where you see meteors burn up at. That's when you see meteors come into the atmosphere, the ozone, and then you see them shoot across the sky. They burn up as they enter, or even the space shuttle that blew up on its re-entry back into the Earth's atmosphere, and it blew up trying to come back in. Because they use what's called ceramic plates on the tip of the shuttles, because the heat that's generated upon entry through these atmospheric pressures create thousands of degrees of heat. So they use ceramic plates to try to not allow the space shuttles to blow up. That's how they re-enter back into the atmosphere. That's the mesosphere. Below that is the stratosphere. The stratosphere is where you begin to be weightless. That's where you lose, where gravity starts to lose its effect on you, and you need oxygen. And then you have the troposphere, which is where commercial planes fly. All these different layers of atmosphere make up what the Most High in the Bible calls the firmament. We just have our own scientific names for them as far as the variations of atmosphere. And there is another one that sits between the mesosphere and the exosphere. It's called the thermosphere. And this is where satellites go in circulation around the earth. This is where satellites take their rotation. All right, and in the thermosphere, which is between the mesosphere and the exosphere, is also the ionosphere. Now, the ionosphere is made up of charged particles. These are invisible atoms that are charged, but their job is to reflect and absorb ultraviolet light from the sun. Their job is to protect you from getting burned up from UV rays. So every time the shuttle goes up and starts punching holes in the atmosphere, it's actually punching holes in that thermosphere or that ionosphere, which is that layer of atmosphere which protects your skin from getting skin cancer. So every time these damn shuttles, and now the Blue Origin or the Elon Musk's damn his whatever you call his plane projects, or the Virgin Galactica guy, you know, his planes that he's building, the Bill Gates planes that he's building for commercial space travel. Every time they're shooting these rockets up out of space, they're busting holes through the ozone layer, through the firmament, which absorbs UV rays, which allows oxidation. They say in the stratosphere holds 90% of the oxygen you breathe, necessary for you to breathe. SpaceX, that was it. SpaceX. It houses 90% of the air you breathe, necessary to support life. So every space flight that's going up, leaving Cape Canaveral or Houston or wherever it's coming from, they're punching holes through the stratosphere, holes through the ionosphere, holes through the stratosphere, giving you high volumes of radiation on your skin. And then they got to come up with new deals to calm the greenhouse gases, because now the greenhouse gases are being too much. And so now heat is being trapped, and they're destroying what the Most High created to keep you alive.
Now they're going to pass some oppressive laws about you can't cut your grass with this kind of injury.
Or the heat index is too high.
Yeah.
You got to stay inside. You can't go outside. The heat index is too high. Why is the heat index too high?
Because of you.
Because they're punching holes through the atmosphere necessary for you to breathe. So what the Most High said is the firmament. It's the protective layer that the Most High created around the earth to keep oxygen in the earth and to keep harmful ultraviolet light out of the earth and radiation from coming into the earth. High amounts of radiation. Yes, sir.
So mankind wasn't never meant to go all the way up.
Mankind was never a giant leap for mankind. One giant step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Mankind was never supposed to be outside of that firmament.
His environment, it's not made for it.
He wasn't made for that. Now there's consequences to poking holes in what the Most High called the firmament.
Sure, that was the talk about.
Now we got it. Now our children, who knows what the strange weather patterns now that are happening, because the ocean's glaciers are melting. Now sea levels are rising. Now the ocean glaciers that kept down methane gas below the surface, when those glaciers melt, there's high amounts of methane gas being released from underwater volcanoes. Volcanoes release horrible gases, killer gases, toxic gases, and the glaciers keep that underwater because there is underwater activity. There's underwater volcanoes. So when the glaciers melt, those gases that was trapped underwater from the ice are now being released into the atmosphere.
And desalinization.
Right.
To the fresh water from the glacier, that fresh water goes into the ocean.
Right. And now these toxic gases are being released straight into the atmosphere. Not including all the nuclear testing from bombs. Not including the nuclear disasters and power plants that blew up in Chernobyl or in Japan, Fukushima, Japan. Not including the fact that they're still releasing radiation. To this day, 20 years later, radiation is still being cooked, is still cooking in the ocean. So the elements are being toxified and destroyed of what the Most High said was supposed to be there as his layer of protection around the earth to divide the waters. Now your air is contaminated. Your water is polluted. Ecclesiastes 43:1.
Ecclesiastes chapter 43 and verse 1. The pride of the height, the clear firmament.
He said that the Most High, he said when he made the firmament, he was proud of it. He enjoyed what he created. We're the ones who take what the Most High created for granted. Well, it ain't us, because we're not in power. It's these other people that are in their heaven that is taking the heavens for granted. That was the Most High's pride when he created the ozone layer. Read it again.
Ecclesiastes chapter 43 and verse 1. The pride of the height.
He said, the Most High said he took pride in his creation, in the height, the expansiveness of the heavens. Talking about the second heaven, the ozone layer, the firmament, and the stars. He said he took pride in the expansiveness of it. Read on.
The clear firmament.
And he said the firmament is what?
Clear.
He said it's clear. That's why although it's made up of all these different variation of gases, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, helium, there's all kind of gases in the air. He says, but you can see right through it. Look at how beautiful the Most High made the ozone layer. In all the things that it does, it traps water in the stratosphere, which brings down rain clouds. And if you're in the north near Canada or Alaska, or you're in Oregon or upper levels of California, you can see Aurelius Borealis. Anybody know what that is?
Northern Lights. That's
the Northern Lights. You know what the Northern Lights is? It's a spectacle of varying lights that happen on their own. You get a random spectrum of lights dancing in the skies, dancing in the heavens on their own. Beautiful colors dancing by themselves. You wouldn't even think you're on Earth. The sky is dancing with a variation of rainbow colors in the sky and moving in different perplexities right in front of your eyes, because it's the gases that the Most High has put there to put on a show for you. The Most High is putting on a show. And it's beautiful. But we take that for granted. We don't, because we're not in control. But read on.
It says, Ecclesiastes chapter 43 verse 1. The pride of the height, the clear firmament, the beauty of heaven.
He said, man, the firmament was the beauty of heaven. Wow. That was like the crown of his creation besides man. He calls the firmament beautiful. Man, it has different functions. Every layer plays different roles necessary for your survival and for your protection. Read on.
It says, with his glorious show.
With his glorious show. Read on.
The sun when it appeareth, declaring at its rising a marvelous instrument.
So when the Most High talking about the firmament, he's talking about the ozone layer and the stars and the celestial bodies that circumference it, that are around it. He's talking about the firmament, the ozone layer, the sun. He calls the sun what? Marvelous. Read on.
The work of the Most High.
Don't you know that the sun also charges the ionosphere and charges the particles? This is what's necessary for water. That's what keeps the water together. That's why when you get a thunderstorm, you see 3 forms of lightning. You either see cloud to cloud lightning that's happening in the atmosphere, or you see cloud to ground lightning, because the particles are heavily charged and the earth is negative. So these charged particles that's coming from the sun is creating a bolt of electricity down in the earth. Or you see ground to cloud lightning. Read on.
Verse 3. At noon it parcheth the country, and who can abide the burning heat thereof?
Go ahead.
A man blowing a furnace is in works of heat, but the sun burneth the mountains 3 times more, breathing out fiery vapors.
They don't even know what the sun is made out of. Right now there's a new instrument of dating that's besides not only carbon dating. The scientists are now using a new instrumentation of dating things by solar flares, because they know that certain time frames in certain years there were solar flares that burnt certain parts of the earth. Now based on when the solar flare hit the earth, and they're able to see the wood that was burnt or the stones that were burnt based on the solar flare, when these tremendous flares happen from the sun, they're able to say, okay, this is the time that man was alive doing what? This is why they're saying right now that the Vikings were here before Columbus, because they're saying that based on solar flares and the burning of solar flares put on wood, and the wood that was found on the coast, that the Vikings, these ships, were here at an approximate date of 1,000 years before Columbus. Actually, not 1,000, 400 years before Columbus, based on solar flares leaving an impression, a burning impression on the earth. So they're now using what the Most High said is marvelous, that furnace that he's talking about. They're using that now to calculate time and history. Read on.
It says, verse 4. A man blowing a furnace is in works of heat, but the sun burneth the mountain 3 times more, breathing out fiery vapors.
And they're now dating things based upon those vapors. Read on.
And sending forth bright beams, it dimmeth the eyes. Great is the Lord that made it.
It says what?
Great is the Lord that made it.
You're not supposed to worship what the Most High created. You're supposed to worship the Creator
that made it.
That made it. When you see the mountains and you see the northern lights, and when you see the atmosphere, or you see a sunset and how beautiful the sunset is with all the different colors in the sky, you're not supposed to honor the sun or the moon. You're not supposed to worship these things. But you're supposed to worship the Creator that created it even that much more. Give honor to the one that made it all. Read on.
And at his commandment it runneth hastily.
And it said, at his commandment the earth is, and the sun is on rotation. The sun it rises in the east and sets in the west. The Most High put the sun on rotation. The Most High put the moon on rotation. The Most High put the stars and the constellations on rotation. That's why he said that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 8? Somebody read that. Or is it 15, 14?
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 15. 14. And the Most High said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day.
That's why the Most High created the stars in the firmament. Now man likes to say the edge of space. Man likes to determine where the edge of space is. Man does not know where space begins, and damn sure does not know where space ends. Now, what man says space ends at is what's called the Kármán line. It was made by this guy, theory created by this guy Thaddeus Kármán. And they say, well, in the Kármán line, which is in the mesosphere, is where, which is about 62 miles above the earth, is where space ends, or the ozone layer ends and space begins. But those are just theories. People don't know, they can't quantify the edge of space.
They've never been there.
They've never been to the edge. You've never been to the limit of space. You don't know what galaxies there are, what heavens there are. You don't know what's in the heavens. We can't even take care of the earth that we have, that we live on, without tearing that up and destroying that. Man does not know. But read on.
It says, verse 14. And the Most High said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night.
Go ahead.
And let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years.
So the Most High put these instruments in the firmament on rotation to give us what?
For signs and seasons, and for days and years.
It's signs, so you know, okay, based upon what constellations in the sky is a good time. This is called an almanac. They got this from the Indians and the slaves. They knew based on the constellations when to plant certain crops. They looked at they could figure it out through the navigation of time. They could see, okay, this constellation is here, the moon is here. We need to plant these crops because the season's about to change. That's called an almanac, a farmer's almanac. The white man did not make the farmer's almanac. That he did not. Read on. He said signs, seasons, what?
And for days and years.
So many indigenous people use the sun to calculate time as an instrument that the Most High put on rotation for our benefit. Let that go. Finish that up in Ecclesiastes 43 and read on down.
Ecclesiastes chapter 43 and verse 5. Great is the Lord that made it.
Read it fast and read it on down. Verse 12.
And at his commandment it runneth hastily.
And the Most High put these instruments, these celestial bodies like the sun and the moon and the stars in heaven to give us understanding of where we are in time. Go ahead. As a calendar system, as a time system, as a clock. Go ahead.
He made the moon also to serve her in her season for a declaration of times.
And what did the Most High make the moon for? A declaration of time. So you can have a monthly schedule. It's like a woman's cycle is based on a lunar schedule. Read on.
And a sign of the world. From the moon is the sign of feasts, a light that decreaseth in her perfection.
And it goes through different phases of the moon. Go ahead.
The month is called after her name.
That's where you get the word month from the moon, from what the Most High put in the firmament. Read on.
Increasing wonderfully in her changing.
That's why the moon goes from full moon to waxing gibbous to waning gibbous to half moon to a quarter moon to a crescent moon. You know, the moon goes through phases. Read on.
Being an instrument of the armies above.
The Most High called the celestial bodies armies. Read on.
Shining in the firmament of heaven.
Shining in the what?
The firmament of heaven.
So when we talk about heaven in the Bible, it's both talking about a nation of people that's in their power, rulership, and authority, good or bad, but it's also talking about the firmament or the ozone layer and the celestial bodies that the Most High created to give lights in the firmament. So we understand what the Most High is referring to when we read the word heaven. Read on.
The beauty of heaven, the glory of the stars, an ornament giving light in the higher places of the Lord.
Go ahead.
At the commandment of the Holy One, they will stand in their order.
And that's why stars will never, people say, man, stars have a lifespan. The Most High said they will always stand in his order, because he gives the order. Read on.
And never faint in their watches.
And said they never faint in what?
In their watches.
Man says that stars have blown out, they've been blown up, and we're just getting the residual of what used to be a supernova or a star. And the flickering of the star is just the remaining particles of light from the explosion of those other stars that imploded on themselves, that became unstable, and the energy released from it, we're just seeing the energy of the remnant of an old star. That's what these people tell you. But the Most High is telling you right here, the stars will never go out of season. They'll never just blow up and just be out of place. Because he's in control of it. Read on.
Look upon the rainbow and praise him that made it.
And when you look at the things that the Most High made in the firmament, you're supposed to do what?
Praise him that made it.
You're not supposed to praise the rainbow, put the rainbow tattoo on you, you know what I'm saying? Worship the rainbow. You're not supposed to worship the stars or the sun or moon. You're supposed to appreciate where it came from. Give honor to the one that created it. Read on.
Very beautiful it is in the brightness thereof.
Go ahead.
It compasseth the heaven about with a glorious circle.
It says, it compasseth the heaven about with a what?
Glorious circle.
Go ahead.
And the hands of the Most High have bended it.
And who bent the rainbow?
The Most High.
The Most High bent it. So now we've taken the rainbow and the ornaments that the Most High put in the firmament and given them a whole new meaning. Now what does the rainbow mean?
Sexuality.
Gender preference, sexuality, identity. That's not the purpose of the rainbow. You can't take what the Most High created and give it your own understanding and say this is what it means. No, that's not what the Most High made it for. He made it so you can appreciate the glory that He created and come back and worship Him even more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now let that go and go to one more scripture on this right here. Go to Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13 verse 2.
Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13 verse 2.
Yes, sir.
Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13 and verse 2 reads, "But deem either fire or wind or the swift air or the circle of the stars or the violent water or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world."
He said you're not supposed to look at the Most High's creation to be the gods that govern the world. You're not supposed to do that, man. The Most High didn't make the sun, moon, and stars to be worshipped. He made them for a particular purpose. They're instruments that the Most High created to give you time, to give you a calendar, to give you a season, to give you a date, to give you understanding of where you are in time. It's not to be worshipped. It's also not to be destroyed and played with and contaminated with and abused and taken for granted. So we got that. All right. Now that's the second heaven that you read about in the Bible, is this firmament, is this ozone layer encompassing the earth, dividing the waters from the waters, consisting of the sun, moon, and stars, the celestial bodies, and the unseen materials, the chemical combination, the chemical particles that the Most High puts together to create organic matter. All right. So now let's go to the third heaven. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 66 verse 1.
Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 1. Thus saith the Heavenly Father, the heaven is my throne.
He said, the Most High said what?
The heaven is my throne.
So when we go into the other form of heaven, which is what Paul was talking about. Now go back to 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 2 real quick. Somebody else read that.
Second Corinthians chapter 12 verse 2. I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. Whether in the body, I cannot tell, or whether out of the body, I cannot tell.
Go ahead.
The Most High knoweth. Such one caught up to the third heaven.
Now we're talking about this third heaven, or this place of the dwelling of the Most High and His angels, the dwelling place of the Most High and His angels. Read on.
Says, verse 3. And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell. The Most High knoweth.
He said the Most High knoweth. So now, let's go to Isaiah now chapter 66 verse 1 again.
Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 1. Thus saith the Heavenly Father, the heaven is my throne.
Now the heaven is the throne, the enthronement, the seat of the Most High. It's the dwelling place of the Most High. It's the dwelling place of the Most High, Christ, and the angels. Right? Read on.
And the earth is my footstool.
And the Most High is where He rests His what?
Foot.
His footstools. And it also says that the clouds of the earth are as the dust of the Most High's feet.
Yeah.
So it shows you the magnitude of how powerful the Most High is.
Amazing. The dust of His feet.
The dust of His feet, bro, make up the clouds that encircle the earth. Because He said that's just my resting place, my footstool. So that's not my dwelling place. See, a lot of times we want to know the beginning of creation, and this is the race for exploration. This is the driving force behind $1 billion worth of space equipment to go find out, where did life begin? Where was the creation at? Is it the Big Bang Theory, where we're created out of just explosions of powerful stars?
Evolution.
And through these explosions, organic matter was created out of thin air, because we don't really believe in the Most High. The Bible's not good enough to some people as a source of information or reference to say it's the Most High who created man. It's not enough for man. Man is too curious. Man wants to know more. Where did life begin? So he goes on a journey to find out when all he has to do is read the Bible.
Yeah.
And he tells you where life began at. Read on.
Says, where is the house that ye built unto me?
He said, where is the house that you built unto me? Go ahead.
And where is the place of my rest?
And where is the place of my dwelling? Man always wants to be nosy and try to peer into the heavens of what the Most High created. Man will never be able to peer or peek or use any type of telescope to see the seat of the Most High. It's impossible. You know why? Go to 2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 20. You cannot peek with a telescope into the Most High's backyard. About as much as you're going to see is the earth and what you can see outside the earth. But you're not going to reach the dwelling place of the Most High.
2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 20.
Yeah, somebody else read. 2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 20. Somebody read.
2nd Ezra chapter 8 verse 20. O Lord, thou that dwellest in everlastingness.
He says the Most High dwells in what?
In everlastingness.
So another word for heaven is what?
Everlasting.
Everlastingness. The Most High dwells in everlastingness. Meaning there is no time. Time is not, the Most High is not on the same time constraint as we are. A day to the Most High is 1,000 years to man. We're not in the same time scale. We're not calculating, we're not using the same instrumentation to tell time. The Most High is on a whole nother time length and wavelength. We can't put the Most High in our own perspective and put him in a box and say the Most High it dwells here, he lives here, this is the house of the Most High. No, the Most High is too great for that. He said our life is as a vapor. Our life is as grass. It springs up and is withered. We're only alive for a few seconds in the Most High's time perspective. We're not on this earth that long. Not in comparison to the Most High's time frame. Read that again.
O Lord, thou that dwellest in everlastingness.
It says the Most High that dwelleth in everlastingness. Go ahead.
Which beholdest from above.
And the Most High is checking you out from where?
Above.
The Most High is watching man from above. Man sometimes doesn't realize that he's being surveillance. There's surveillance on him.
Yeah.
As some people are using satellites to have public surveillance on people, the Most High has an ultimate surveillance ability on mankind in total.
Yeah.
And he watches man from above. Read on.
From above, things in the heaven and in the air.
He says he's checking out things in the heavens and in the air. Read on.
Verse 21. Whose throne is inestimable.
He says the Most High's throne is what?
Inestimable.
What does that mean?
You can't count it.
You cannot calculate it. You cannot count it. You cannot measure it. It's immeasurable.
No educated guess.
There is no hypothesis. You can take a guess, but your guess will still be wrong. Because you cannot quantify the Most High's dwelling place. It cannot be measured. Where the Most High dwells is immeasurable. Now you can say that the earth is made up of so much water, 70% water. You can say that the earth has so much land mass. You can say that. Even that might still be wrong. But to be able to predict, to be able to say, to be able to guess at where the Most High dwells is impossible. He said it's inestimable. You can't estimate it. It's immeasurable. Read on.
Whose glory may not be comprehended.
It says his glory may not be what?
Comprehended.
You cannot comprehend.
You can't comprehend this man.
You can't even imagine where the Most High dwells at. You couldn't even think about it. You couldn't even come up with even if you were given 100 years, you couldn't come up with what the Most High's dwelling place looked like.
And brothers don't want to listen to him now.
And brothers don't want to listen to the Bible.
We like this. Fall asleep by it.
Yeah. You can't quantify the Most High's dwelling place.
Oh.
Cannot. You could spend your whole life trying and you'll die fruitless.
God.
It'll be futile. It'll be in vain. That's why I said, man, the Most High's dwelling place, you can't even comprehend. You couldn't understand where the Most High lives. You can't understand it. Matter of fact, he said, read that part again.
Whose glory may not be comprehended.
He says, whose glory may not be what?
Comprehended.
So, go to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 22 real quick.
Are you open this one?
Yeah, let that go. Yes, verse 21?
Yes.
No, finish that in 21 first. Finish
Verse
that in 21. Hold on, before you write that down, somebody else give me Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 and 16. And then read 1 Peter 3 and 22. Finish that in 2nd Ezra chapter 8, verse 21.
2nd Ezra chapter 8, verse 21.
Whose
throne is inestimable.
He says, whose throne is what?
Inestimable.
Is inestimable. Go ahead for Colossians 1.
Whose glory may not be comprehended.
Go ahead.
Before whom the hosts of angels stand with trembling.
Now, if you want to read about the host of angels that surround the throne of the Most High, read Revelations chapter 4. Write that down. If you want to read about the angelic beings that surround the throne, if you want to get a picture of at least an idea about the order that the Most High has structured around His throne, read Revelations chapter 4. Write that down. We're not going to read it all right now, but read Revelation chapter 4. That'll give you an idea about the order that the Most High has established around His throne. All right? And the angels, he said, stand before the throne what?
Whom the hosts of angels with trembling. Stand with trembling.
They stand in front of the Most High with what? With trembling.
Before whom the hosts of angels stand with trembling.
They're afraid of the Most High. They follow the Most High's orders. They follow His instruction. They tremble, they shake, they quiver in front of the Most High. That's how powerful the Most High is. Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 and 16.
Colossians chapter 1 and verse 15. Who is the image of the invisible power?
So the closest that we have as an image to the Most High is who?
The invisible power.
Who is the image of the invisible power? Yahweh Shai, Christ. Christ is the image of the invisible power. Christ is the closest that you're going to get to looking at the Most High. He's the closest you're going to get in comparison to visualizing or comprehending the Most High. He's the closest you're going to get. He says, who is the image of the Most High? Go ahead.
The firstborn of every creature.
He is the firstborn of what?
Every creature.
He's the firstborn of every creature. The Most High made Christ first before He made anybody. Read on.
For by Him are all things created.
And Christ, and along with Christ, and with the angels, with the angelic beings, the Alahayim, they created all the things that you see in the stars. They created the heavens and the earth, the trees, the mountains, the seas, the fish, the water, the herbs, the fruits, the mankind. They created everything. Christ and the angels went to work. But the Most High created Christ first. Read.
That are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible.
It says that are in heaven and in earth, that is visible and what?
Invisible.
And invisible. Things that you can't even see. Christ and the angels have already produced things. Things that you cannot see. That's why Christ said this. Go to St. John chapter 14 verse 1 real quick.
Yep. St. John chapter 14 verse 1. Ready?
Yep.
Let not your heart be troubled.
That's why he said, don't let your heart be troubled as this world, as this earth falls apart and is destroyed by the leaders and the powers that be. He said, don't let your heart be troubled. Read on.
Ye believe in the Most High.
He said, if you believe in the Most High, go ahead.
Believe also in me.
Why? Because we just read who is the closest thing to the Most High that we're going to get.
Christ.
It's Christ. He said he is the express image of the Most High. He's the closest to the Most High you're going to get. So he said, if you believe in the Most High, just believe in me. Don't be stressed. Don't look at your current condition and let your current condition overwhelm you. Read on.
In my Father's house are many mansions.
He says there's already many mansions already built in his Father's house. We just can't see it. These mansions, these cities that have streets of gold, these places have already been built by Christ. We just can't see it. He said, in my Father's house is many mansions. Read on.
If it were not so, I would have told you.
Stop right there. Hold that. We're going to come back to that later on. Finish that right there and where we at in Colossians, right?
1 and 15.
1 and 15, right?
Do you want it from the top?
Yeah, read it from the top.
Who is the image of the invisible power?
He says Christ is the image of the what?
Invisible power.
So it shows you that the Most High is in what? He's invisible. The Most High is invisible. You can't see the Most High. And the Most High made it that way. He created man to just be in this particular circumference under the atmosphere of the firmament, the second heaven. We live on earth. We're earthly dwellers. We're not made to travel beyond and outside Earth's atmosphere, trying to see something that we're not supposed to see. He said, but the things that you have to worry about, just know is the fact that there's already other habitable dwelling places that Christ has already created that you just haven't seen with your eyes yet. And you can't even imagine what this paradise will look like. From there, let that go and go to where we were at in Peter, 1 Peter 3 and 22.
1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 22. Who is gone into heaven.
It said, who is gone into heaven? Go ahead.
And is on the right side of the Most High.
So who went back to the Most High after he was crucified? Christ. And where is Christ sitting at?
In the third heaven.
He's sitting in heaven on the right side in the Most High's house, the Most High's dwelling place. He's sitting on the right side of the throne, right next to the Most High. Read on.
Angels and authorities.
And he said, angels and authorities, go ahead.
And powers being made subject unto him.
And guess where he's back at? He's back in his kingdom. He's back in heaven, which is his kingdom. That's why Christ told Pilate, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom was if my kingdom was from hence, then my servants would fight that the Jews would not take me. They wouldn't be able to put their hands on me. Because where Christ sits in that third heaven that we're reading about, he said he's sitting right next to the Most High, and right next to the Most High there's angels and there's what? Authorities
and powers.
Go ahead, which are servants. Angelic beings serving Christ. Go ahead.
Being made subject unto him.
Following every single command of Christ. Every last commandment. Every last order. Waiting on instruction. Christ right now is in his kingdom. That's where he's at. And he's the closest that you're going to get to visualizing and seeing the Most High. That's why Christ told Timothy, read that in St. John chapter 14 and verse 8 or verse 9.
St. John chapter 14, you want 8?
Yeah, I think verse 8.
Philip?
Yeah, Philip, I'm sorry.
Right, Philip saith unto him?
Yeah.
This is St. John chapter 14 verse 8. Philip saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father.
That's why Philip asked Christ, he said, man, I know you're sent from the Most High, but can you let us see the Most High? Can you show us the Father? And that will remove any shadow of a doubt that you're the Son of the Most High. That'll be the icing on the cake. If you could just show me and reveal to me the Most High, then I believe. I'm sold. Show me the Most High and you make me a believer. But what did Christ say? Read on. He said, no, finish that in 8. Read that one more time.
Philip saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us.
And it'll satisfy us. Read on.
Yahushua saith unto him, have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He hath seen me. He who hath seen me has seen the Father.
He said, he who hath seen me have what?
Has seen the Father.
So if you've seen Christ, then you've seen what?
The Father.
Then you've seen the Most High, because Christ is the closest and that you're going to get as a man to seeing Christ. I mean, as seeing the Most High. He's the express image. He's a direct reflection of the Most High. That's why Christ told him, if you see me, you've seen the Father. Read on.
And how sayest thou then, show us the Father?
And then that's why he's saying, how are you going to tell me, show me the Father? He's saying, me and my Father are one. Read on.
Verse 10. Believest thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me.
And now the reward that he's trying to tell them is, if you follow me, if you believe me that I'm from the Father, go to Luke chapter 22 verse 30. Luke chapter 22 verse 30.
Luke chapter 22 verse 30. That ye may eat and drink at my table in the kingdom.
He says, if you follow me and become my disciple, you'll get a chance to eat and drink with me in what?
Table in my kingdom.
You'll eat at my table in what?
In my kingdom.
In my kingdom. In my heaven. Where I have authority, where I have power, where I have rulership, where I'm recognized as king, where I have dominion and control, where angels and powers and authorities are subject unto me. He says, you get to sit with me at my table. Read on.
And sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
So what else goes on in heaven?
Judgment.
Judgment goes on in heaven. And he says, you'll be with me. Next, you'll have your own throne, judging the what?
12 tribes of Israel.
He said, this is the reward if you choose to be my disciple. But Philip wanted more evidence. That wasn't good enough for Philip.
Come.
He just couldn't believe that Christ would have that already established for him. It wasn't enough. Some of us still to this day is not enough. You see the Most High's creation every day you get up in the morning, and you still doubt the Most High in Christ. You breathe the ozone that he created, which is the firmament. You breathe it in every day, and you still doubt the Most High's abilities. That's what he said. I have a reward if you choose to follow after me. Same thing he said in Matthew chapter 19, verse 28. Read that. Matthew chapter 19, verse 28. Read that.
Matthew chapter 19, verse 28.
Read that.
And Yahweh said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Same thing he said right there, where judgment goes down. That's where the third heaven is also where the Most High dwells. It's where the angels dwell and minister to him, and are made subject unto him. It's where the Most High's will is executed, and it's also a place of judgment and a place of counsel. We know that from Job chapter 1 verse 6. Read that. Somebody else read Job chapter 1 verse 6.
Chapter 1 verse 6?
Yep.
Job chapter 1 and verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of the Most High came to present themselves before the Heavenly Father.
And where does the Most High sit? In heaven, which is inestimable, immeasurable, in the invisible, because the Most High is invisible. He dwells in the everlasting. And where the Most High sits is a throne. And amongst the Most High's throne is angels surrounding the throne. And the Most High it's a place, the Most High calls these spirits up for counsel and for judgment. Read on.
And Satan came also
so
among
it also
them.
is showing you that Satan is a what?
Is an angel.
Is an angel. He's one of the sons of the Most High. He has a duty. He has a job. What is his job? Read on.
And the Heavenly Father said unto Satan, Whence comest thou?
Where are you coming from? Satan? Read on.
Then Satan answered the Most High and said, From going to and fro in the earth.
He's showing you that only angelic beings have the ability to travel between dimensions. They have the ability to travel between the earthly realm and the invisible realm. They have that ability. Angels have the ability to travel between dimensions. That's why Hebrews chapter 13 verse 2 says what? Somebody get that real quick. Hold that where you at.
Come.
In Job, somebody read Hebrews 13 and 2 real fast. Whoever got it.
Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 2 reads, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers."
It says, "Be not forgetful to entertain" who?
Strangers.
Why? Why is the Bible telling you don't forget to entertain strangers? Read.
"For thereby some have entertained angels unaware."
Because angels have the ability to travel where? Between heaven and earth. They have the ability to descend from heaven down to earth, and they have the ability to ascend back to heaven. Satan is one of these angelic beings who possess this power to travel between the seen, the visible, the carnal world, and the invisible in the spiritual world. He has that ability. He's under orders from the Most High. And now let that go, and now go back to Job where you was at in verse 7.
Job chapter 1 verse 7. "And the Most High said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Most High and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it."
And walking up and down in it. So Satan just came. He's in a council with the Most High in the heavenly realm, or the so-called fourth dimension, the unseen dimension, the everlastingness, or the dwelling place of the Most High. And then he told the Most High, "I've been going back and forth into earth, walking up and down in the earth." Satan has the ability to be so-called transmutable between the seen and the unseen dimensions. Read on.
Verse 8. "And the Most High said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job?"
So they're having a council about who?
Job.
And where does Job dwell?
On earth.
On earth. So the Most High is creating councils about judgment. Have you tested? Have you tried? Have you tempted? Have you tried to get at or tested the faith of my servant Job? So this is where the Most High is holding counsel in this particular realm. But angels have that ability to go between both. And the same thing Christ said. Christ said this. Go to Mark chapter 1 verse 13. Somebody read that.
Mark chapter 1 verse 13 reads, "And he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and the angels ministered unto him."
And so after Christ survived the temptation of Satan, who came down to help strengthen Christ and encourage Christ?
And the angels ministered unto him.
So it shows you that the angels came out of heaven after the temptation of Christ, of Satan tempting Christ in the wilderness. The angels came down and strengthened him and encouraged him to keep going. They have that ability to go between those dimensions. We understand that? John chapter 1 verse 51. That's why this verse makes sense, reading what we just read now. Go to John chapter 1 verse 51.
And the verse you quoted in Mark, what was the chapter verse?
That was Mark chapter 1 verse 13.
John chapter 1 verse 51. "And he saith unto them, unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you."
Truly, truly, I say unto you. Christ is saying this is the truth. Read on.
"Hereafter ye shall see heaven open."
He says you're gonna, if you be with me, if you follow me and become my disciple, you're gonna see greater things. He says you're gonna see heaven open. Read on.
"And the angels of the Most High ascending."
And they'll be coming down from heaven. Read on.
"And descending."
And descending, going back up to the Most High. Going between, back and forth, between dimensions. Read on.
"Upon the Son of Man."
And they'll be coming to me, ministering unto me. Just like we read in Mark chapter 1 verse 13. That's why it makes sense that angels have this ability to transfer between dimensions. Now go to Revelation chapter 4. Just read verse 2 real quick.
Revelation chapter 4, verse 2 reads, and immediately I was in the Spirit.
He says, immediately, John the Revelator was in the what?
Spirit.
He was in the Spirit. Go ahead. Now read verse 1 then 2. I'm sorry.
Come. Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 reads, after this I looked, and behold, a door was open in heaven.
He says, a door was open in heaven. Go ahead.
And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me.
Go ahead.
Which said, come up hither.
It says, so obviously heaven sits above earth. And the angel, a voice told him, come up into this world. Come up into this realm. Read on.
Come up hither, and I will shew the things which must be hereafter.
He says that I'm going to show you things that is going to come to pass. I'm going to give you a future prophecy. Read on.
And immediately I was in the Spirit.
And he says immediately he was in the what?
Spirit.
Why immediately? In order to get this message, he had to be in the Spirit. Anybody?
Because he had a spiritual realm.
Let's find out. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Read that verse 44.
1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 44.
Start at verse 40.
Verse 40. There are also celestial bodies.
Because when Christ made creation, he made celestial bodies or angelic beings that you cannot see. Heavenly bodies. Both consisting of the stars, sun, and moon, and stars, but also consisting of angelic beings. Read on.
And bodies terrestrial.
And who are the bodies terrestrial? We are. We're the terrestrial body. Terrestrial means earthly, of the earth. So there's two different types of people that was made in creation. Heavenly bodies were made. Angelic beings were created, which were invisible, but also earthly beings were created. Read on.
But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another.
He says, but they hold different emphasis. They're different in their glory. They have different capabilities. They're made differently. They have different limitations. Jump down to verse 44.
Verse 44. It is sown a natural body.
It says it is sown a what?
Natural body.
So we start off on earth how?
Natural.
We start off on earth natural. A man made of flesh. Read on.
It is raised a spiritual body.
It says, but if you follow after Christ, you come out of your natural form. And you get to be elevated out of your natural form into what?
Spiritual.
And you get to see the spiritual side of you. Now when you read Matthew chapter 17, read that real quick. Hold that. Matthew chapter 17 real quick. And start at verse, we're almost done here. Matthew chapter 17. And start at verse 1.
Matthew chapter 17, verse 1.
Read that.
And after 6 days, Yahushua taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart. Verse 2. And was transfigured before them.
And he was what?
And was transfigured.
So right in front of James, Peter, and John, Christ did what?
Transfigured.
He took off his mortal, earthly, carnal clothes. He took off his flesh. Right in front of James, Peter, and John. He took his flesh off. Read on.
Before them. And his face did shine as the sun.
And they were able to see him how? They were able to see him in the spirit. They were able to see his spirit, not beyond just his flesh. Read on.
And his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him.
And who was talking to Christ in the spirit?
Moses and Elias.
So when Christ took off his mortal clothing, there appeared right in front of James, Peter, and John, Moses and Elias, which had been dead for 1,000 years, but was talking with Christ in the spirit, showing you that in the spirit doesn't die. The limitations of the body are subjugated to the earth. It's temporary. But what the spirit that the Most High gave you has the ability to live forever. That's why Christ in the spirit was still speaking with Moses and Elijah. Read on.
Verse 4. Then answered Peter and said unto Yahushua, Lord, it is good for us to be here.
Stop right there. Let's go back to where it was at in 1 Corinthians.
1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 44. It is sown a natural body.
And that's how the body starts off. It starts off spiritual. But guess what? You're made of the composition of two elements. You possess both the body and the spirit. You possess the body and the spirit. But whichever one you feed is the one that you'll get to dwell in or utilize thereafter. You're either going to, and this is going to be the second part of the class. 3 heavens, 3 hells. This is going to be the second part of the class. We're not going to do it tonight. But whatever you do in the body, in the carnal, will determine where you reside thereafter in the spirit. Read on.
It is raised a spiritual body.
Go ahead.
There is a natural body.
He said there's a what?
A natural body.
And that's the terrestrial body. That's the body that initially James, Peter, and John saw, but they saw Christ take off that natural body. Read on.
And there is a spiritual body.
And they saw him in the what?
The spirit.
In the spiritual body. In order to see the Most High, in order to see or to get even prophecy from the Most High, a lot of times they had to see, they had to be either in a vision, they had to be either asleep, or they had to be in the spirit. And he's going to explain that our flesh is too polluted for the Most High to deal directly with us. We have to be in the spirit to serve the Most High. You can't be in the flesh serving the Most High. How do we know that? Go to John chapter 4, verse 24. If you're going to serve the Most High, you can't serve the Most High just in the flesh. You got to serve the Most High in the spirit. John chapter 4, verse 24.
John chapter 4, verse 24. The Most High is a spirit.
And the Most High is invisible. That's why Christ showed himself in the spirit to James, Peter, and John. He said the Most High is a what?
The Most High is a spirit.
You can't please the Most High in the flesh. You can only please the Most High in the spirit. You cannot please the Most High following after your carnal appetites and your carnal desires. You cannot. Read on.
And they that worship him must worship him in spirit.
And they that follow after the Most High and worship the Most High and honor the Most High must worship him in what?
In spirit.
Go ahead.
And in truth.
Now we know what the spirit and the truth is. But back to where we was at in 1 Corinthians. Yes, sir.
Move fast. Philippians 1:22.
Time. Just read it.
Philippians chapter 1, verse 22.
Oh, you got it. Go ahead.
But if I live in the flesh,
if I choose the flesh, read.
This is the fruit of my labor.
You got what you work for.
Well, you got your reward.
You could have had
that again. I'm sorry.
That's Philippians chapter 1, verse 22.
Yeah, if I built my life around my flesh, the blessing you got was you got to enjoy your flesh.
Yep. That's the extent of your kingdom. That's you built your heaven. Go back to 1 Corinthians 15. We're going to wrap it up.
1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 44. It is sown a natural body.
So it starts off a natural body. Go ahead.
It is raised a spiritual body.
But it's raised how? A spiritual body. Read on.
There is a natural body.
There's a what?
Natural body.
There's two different things. There's a natural body. Go ahead.
And there is a spiritual body.
And there's a spiritual body. So it's read verse 46. No.
45.
Read verse 50. Get straight to the point.
50. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of the Heavenly Father.
That's why in Revelation chapter 4, read verse 2 again.
Yeah.
Somebody, whoever had it.
Revelation chapter 4, verse 2.
Read that.
And immediately I was in the spirit.
That's why, in order for John the Revelator to get this revelation that we know today is the book of Revelations, John could not be in the flesh to get the book of Revelations. In order to get the book of Revelations, John had to be in the what?
In the spirit.
He had to be in the spirit. You got to be in the spirit to get the revelations or get direct communication from the Most High to this level. So you have to worship the Most High from His standpoint of where He comes from, executing His will, following after His judgments, His commandments. That's why John had to come out of the body in order to get what the book that we call Revelations. Finish that in verse 50.
Verse 50. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 50. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of the heavenly Father.
So if you're going to make it to dwell where the Most High dwells, what must you be in?
The spirit.
You must be in the spirit. If you're going to get to that third kingdom, that third heaven that we're talking about, the kingdom where the Most High dwells and the angels dwell, you cannot serve the Most High in the flesh. You cannot be about your flesh and make it to that third heaven. You got to be in the spirit.
The purest element.
Yep. Following after the express image of Christ. Read on.
Neither doth corruption inherit in corruption.
And that's why the Most High don't want your flesh coming to heaven. There's no need for it. It's too polluted. It's too contaminated. It's too subject to sin. It's too weak to sin. It's too full of sinful nature. So in order to dwell in that, or to make it to that third heaven where the Most High and the angels in Christ dwell, we have the possibility and the ability to dwell there as well, as long as we put off this mortal clothing. As long as we put away the lust of the flesh. Any questions? With that, we're going to say shalom. All right?
Shalom.
Shalom. Imagine we'll point to Adam, rise and face the east. Go ahead and end it right there.